I am Tasha, 35 years old, and I spent my entire life being treated as the unpaid help by the very people who were supposed to be my family. I am standing in the blistering heat of a luxury country club kitchen, frantically scrubbing a phantom stain off my brother Andre's custom designer tuxedo. My mother Brenda marches in, snapping her fingers at me with that familiar look of absolute disdain. Tasha, you are moving like molasses. Get out there and serve the hors d'oeuvres and keep your head down. You know how Andre's new in-laws are. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to cut off toxic family to find your true worth. The heat in the kitchen is absolutely suffocating. Steam rises from massive industrial stoves clinging to my skin and making the cheap polyester of my plain black server uniform stick to my back. I am holding a damp cloth, pressing it into the lapel of Andre's immaculate white dinner jacket. He is 33 years old today, the undisputed golden child of the family, and he spilled a drop of expensive espresso on himself just moments before he is supposed to walk into his lavish reception. Of course, the immediate solution was to summon me. It did not matter that I was supposed to be a guest. It did not matter that I am his older sister. In this family, my primary function has always been to clean up his messes. Brenda hovers over me, her perfectly manicured nails tapping impatiently against the stainless steel prep counter. She snatches the jacket from my hands the second I finish dabbing away the faint brown mark. "You should be grateful we even let you work the reception today," she scoffs, adjusting her elaborate silk shawl. "You are 35 years old, still completely single and going nowhere. The least you can do is make yourself useful so your brother can enjoy his perfect day without any embarrassments. Just make sure you stay in the back. Do not try to mingle. The Sterling family comes from real pedigree, and they do not need to be subjected to your awkwardness." I bite my tongue so hard I can taste copper. I look down at my scuffed black shoes and the scratchy apron tied around my waist. I do not say a word. I do not defend myself. I just nod, letting her believe she has successfully put me in my place. For 23 years, my life was defined by this exact dynamic. I cooked their breakfasts before the sun came up. I prepared their lavish dinners while they entertained guests strictly forbidden from sitting at the dining table with them. They told me some children are simply born to serve a narrative they weaponize to keep my self-esteem buried in the dirt. But what they intended as a prison, I turned into a masterclass. What Brenda does not know, what none of them know, is that I am not just a maid. I am secretly a highly successful culinary consulting mogul. The intricate fusion menu being served at this very country club tonight is based on concepts I pioneered and sold to their catering company for a small fortune. I own a multi-million-dollar business, a sprawling penthouse, and a life of absolute luxury that they cannot even begin to fathom. But I keep it entirely hidden. I keep it hidden because revealing my success to them would only mean they would try to steal it, drain it, or destroy it. I learned a long time ago that my survival depended on my silence. I let them think I am struggling. I let them think I am a failure. It is the perfect armor. Taking a deep breath of the stifling kitchen air, I pick up a heavy silver tray loaded with delicate smoked salmon blinis and step through the swinging double doors into the opulent reception hall. The contrast is jarring. The room is a sanctuary of air-conditioned comfort, dripping in old money elegance. Massive crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over dozens of tables draped in ivory linen. A live jazz band plays softly in the corner, mingling with the sophisticated chatter of Boston's elite. And right in the middle of it all are my relatives. Aunts, uncles, and cousins who have spent 3 decades watching Brenda and my father Richard treat me like a second-class citizen. I move through the crowd offering appetizers. My own family members actively look right through me. My cousin leans past me to grab a napkin, not even making eye contact. My aunt waves her hand dismissively when I approach her table, snapping her fingers and demanding a glass of sparkling water instead of the food I am carrying. It is a deeply ingrained, almost pathological dynamic. Because Brenda and Richard raised Andre as a prince and me as a servant, the rest of the extended family naturally followed suit. They view my dark skin and plain uniform as a confirmation of my lesser status. I am just Tasha, the quiet, unfortunate girl who never amounted to anything, blending seamlessly into the background, while the beautiful, successful Andre marries into immense wealth. I navigate around a towering floral arrangement of white orchids and roses, making my way toward the head table. There sits Andre, looking incredibly smug in his now spotless tuxedo. He is holding a glass of champagne, leaning back in his chair, with the arrogant posture of a man who believes the entire world revolves around him. Beside him is his bride, Chloe. She is breathtakingly beautiful, dressed in a custom lace gown that probably cost more than my first year of college tuition. Chloe is a wealthy, privileged white woman entirely oblivious to the sinister reality of the family she is marrying into. She thinks Brenda is a strict but loving mother. She thinks Andre is a hardworking, brilliant entrepreneur. She has absolutely no idea that Andre's supposed business ventures have been propped up by stolen money, or that the woman serving her appetizers is his abused older sister. As I inch closer, the sheer absurdity of the situation almost makes me laugh. Here is Andre pretending to be a self-made titan of industry, while I, the actual self-made millionaire, am carrying his hors d'oeuvres. But the discipline that built my empire keeps my expression perfectly neutral. I step closer to the head table, my silver tray perfectly balanced. I keep my eyes lowered, following Brenda's strict instructions to remain invisible. I focus on the polished silverware, the crystal goblets, the intricate lace of the tablecloth. I just need to place the tray down, fade back into the crowd, and endure the rest of this charade until I can retreat to my real life. But as I step into their line of sight, Chloe turns her head. Her blue eyes meet mine, and unlike my own family, she does not look through me. Her expression softens into a genuine warm smile. She actually sees me as a human being. She shifts in her seat, preparing to speak to me, perhaps to thank me, or ask my name, completely unaware that interacting with the help is considered a cardinal sin by my socially climbing mother. I tentatively raise my head, offering a small practiced smile in return, lifting the tray to present the delicate appetizers to the bride. But before I can even extend the tray toward her, before a single word can be exchanged between us, a sudden blinding burst of white light explodes right in my face. The flash is so bright, so intense, that I flinch, my heart leaping into my throat. The sudden eruption of light cuts through the ambient noise of the reception, freezing the moment in an uncomfortable, jagged pause. Someone is standing directly in front of the table holding a vintage camera, and that someone has just taken a direct, uncomfortably close photograph of my face. I blink rapidly, trying to clear the blinding white spots from my vision. The heavy silver tray in my hands dips slightly, but my deeply ingrained muscle memory kicks in immediately, keeping the crystal champagne flutes and delicate smoked salmon appetizers perfectly balanced. As my eyesight slowly returns, I see the man standing on the other side of the camera lens. It is Harrison Sterling. He is Chloe's father and a retired federal judge whose reputation for ruthless precision in the courtroom preceded him, even in the high-end culinary circles I secretly move in. He holds a vintage Leica camera suspended mid-air, his finger frozen stiffly on the shutter button. The joyous expression of a proud father celebrating his daughter's perfect day vanishes completely from his face. It is not a gradual fade or a polite shift in demeanor. The warm smile is instantly wiped away, replaced by an expression of absolute, unadulterated shock. He stares at me with wide, unblinking eyes, as if a ghost has just walked out of the kitchen and handed him a plate of food. The air around the head table seems to thicken instantly. He is looking at me, but not the way my family normally looks at me. He is not seeing a lowly maid in a cheap black uniform. He is scanning my face, tracking the slope of my cheekbones, the exact shape of my jaw, the spacing of my eyes. He is looking at me like a crucial piece of evidence that just blew a decades-old cold case wide open. Before Harrison can utter a single word, the space between us is violently breached. Andre steps forward, moving with a frantic, jerky energy that betrays his polished, sophisticated exterior. He deliberately shoves his shoulder hard into mine, forcing me to take a stumbling step backward. The champagne flutes rattle precariously on my tray, threatening to shatter across the polished dance floor. Andre physically plants himself between me and his future father-in-law, using his tall frame as a barricade. "Get back to the kitchen right now," he hisses at me through a tightly clenched jaw, his voice dropping to a vicious, dangerous whisper intended only for my ears. "Do not ruin this for me, you stupid girl." He then turns back to Harrison, slapping on a wide, painfully fake smile that completely fails to reach his eyes. "Excuse the help, Harrison." He laughs, a nervous, grating sound that echoes awkwardly over the soft jazz playing in the background. "She is a bit slow. Just a charity hire my parents keep around to do the heavy lifting." "I am so sorry she interrupted your photo. Let me get you a fresh drink and we can go back to celebrating." The sheer audacity of his words makes my blood boil hot and fast. A charity hire. The brother whose entire luxurious life is funded by an illusion calling the actual architect of his catered feast slow. I tighten my grip on the edge of the silver tray, imagining just how satisfying it would be to smash it directly into his perfectly styled face. But I hold my ground. I do not retreat to the kitchen like a frightened child. The disciplined businesswoman inside me recognizes a massive shift in the power dynamic unfolding right in front of my eyes, and I refuse to look away. I plant my feet firmly on the floor, waiting for the next move. Harrison does not laugh at Andre's terrible joke. He does not accept the offer of a fresh drink. In fact, he does not even acknowledge Andre's presence in the slightest. The retired judge steps forcefully around my brother, treating him like an insignificant obstacle in his path. Andre tries to sidestep to block him again, attempting to maintain control of the narrative, but Harrison shoots him a glare so sharp and filled with authority that it effectively nails Andre to the floor. Harrison steps so close to me that I can smell the expensive scotch and sharp cedarwood cologne he wears. His eyes are locked onto mine, intense and probing, searching for something hidden just beneath the surface. "What is your name?" he asks. His voice is not loud, but it carries the absolute unyielding authority of a man accustomed to having his questions answered under oath. It cuts right through the ambient noise of the reception hall, commanding immediate obedience. I stand tall, rolling my shoulders back and meeting his intense gaze directly. "My name is Tasha." I answer, my voice steady and clear, refusing to use the submissive, hesitant tone my family always demanded from me. "Natasha." What he demands, stepping even closer, his breathing growing shallow. "What is your full legal name?" Before I can respond, Brenda materializes beside us like a hawk violently defending its nest. She has practically sprinted across the polished dance floor, her expensive silk shawl slipping off her shoulders and dragging behind her. "Harrison, please." Brenda interrupts, inserting herself into the tight circle with a shrill, artificial laugh that completely fails to mask the sheer terror radiating from her eyes. She grabs my arm, her manicured fingers digging painfully into my skin, trying to yank me backward toward the kitchen doors. "She is just a server, a troubled girl we took in out of the goodness of our hearts," Brenda says, her voice hitting a panicked, erratic pitch. "Let us not ruin the wedding photos with the hired help." Chloe is waiting for her father-daughter dance, and the band is ready to begin. Harrison does not flinch. He slowly turns his piercing gaze from me to Brenda. He looks at her hand gripping my arm like a vice and then looks directly into her wide, fearful eyes. "Where was she born, Brenda?" he asks, the volume of his voice dropping to a dangerous rumbling register that demands absolute truth. Brenda freezes completely. Her mouth opens, but no sound comes out. The elegant, sophisticated matriarch facade she spent decades cultivating cracks and shatters into pieces of pure panic right in front of my eyes. "I asked you a question, Brenda," he says, enunciating every single syllable with terrifying precision. "Where and when exactly was this woman born?" "I want the hospital. I want the city. I want the date. Tell me right now." Brenda's voice hits an octave so high it sounds like a dog whistle. "That is a ridiculous question." She stammers, her hands shaking so badly she has to let go of my arm. "She was born in Atlanta. No, Chicago. I do not remember the hospital. She is just a girl we know. Why are you asking about the caterers, Harrison? You are making a scene over absolutely nothing. The guests are starting to stare at us. She is practically hyperventilating, her eyes darting frantically toward the exit doors, looking for an escape route. Sweat beads on her forehead, ruining her flawless makeup. She looks exactly like a cornered animal, realizing the trap has just snapped shut. Andre, completely clueless to the gravity of the situation, tries to salvage the disaster by misreading the room entirely. Look, Harrison, if she offended you, I will have her fired immediately, he declares, puffing out his chest to look like the man in charge of the estate. I will have security throw her out the back door right now so we can get back to the party. Chloe, honey, tell your dad to relax and come sit down. But Chloe is not relaxing. She has stood up from her chair, her heavy lace gown rustling loudly in the sudden oppressive silence that has fallen over the head table. The jazz band seems to sense the aggressive tension spreading through the room, the music faltering and fading into an uncomfortable, jarring halt. The clinking of silverware stops. The low hum of polite conversation dies out. The entire room of wealthy, prominent guests is turning their heads to watch the confrontation unfolding at the front of the hall. Harrison does not look at Brenda anymore. He does not look at Andre, who is still puffing his chest out in a pathetic display of dominance. He slowly turns his body away from us, facing his daughter directly. The color has completely drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and stricken, but his posture remains rigid with undeniable authority. Chloe, he says, his voice deadly calm, echoing through the silent reception hall, like a heavy wooden gavel striking a sounding block. Take off the veil, Chloe. Call off the wedding, right now. The silence that follows Harrison's command is heavy and absolute, pressing down on the room like a physical weight. For a second, no one breathes. The string quartet, mid-phrase in a light classical piece, abruptly stops, a discordant screech of a bow against a cello string echoing loudly. The murmurs of the guests fade into a collective gasp. Andre's face flushes a deep, angry red. He steps forward, puffing out his chest, attempting to use his size to intimidate Harrison, completely missing the fact that Harrison Sterling cannot be intimidated by a man whose entire life is built on a facade. What the hell are you talking about? Andre demands, his voice cracking slightly, betraying his sudden panic. You can't just call off the wedding. We've spent hundreds of thousands on this weekend alone. Chloe, tell your father he's being ridiculous. Chloe doesn't move. She stands frozen, staring at me, her eyes wide with a dawning horror as she looks from my face to her father's, then to Brenda's terrified expression. Harrison ignores Andre, treating him with the exact same disdain Andre usually reserves for me. He turns his attention to Richard, who has finally managed to push his way to the front of the crowd, adjusting his tie with slick, sweaty fingers. Richard has always played the role of the successful, benevolent patriarch, but right now he looks like a man standing on the trapdoor of a gallows. Harrison, please, let's go to a private room. Richard stammers, reaching out a hand as if to guide the retired judge away. Whatever misunderstanding this is, we can sort it out. Tasha is just... she's our troubled daughter. A charity case, really. We've kept her off the streets for 35 years out of the goodness of our hearts. She has issues, Harrison. You can't take whatever she's done or said seriously. The words hang in the air, a familiar, sickening lie they have used to explain away my presence whenever anyone asked too many questions. A charity case. The troubled daughter they graciously allowed to live in their basement while they paraded Andre around as their greatest achievement. I feel a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. The anger I have suppressed for 35 years, the rage I have channeled into building my culinary empire finally boils over. I don't raise my voice. I don't scream. I simply let go of the heavy silver tray. It hits the marble floor with a deafening, echoing crash. Crystal champagne flutes shatter, sending shards of glass and expensive liquor flying across the polished floor. The sound is a gunshot in the silent room. Everyone jumps. Brenda lets out a muffled shriek. Charity case, I say, my voice steady, cutting through the shock. You kept me off the streets. I step forward, crushing the broken glass beneath my plain black server shoes. I walk directly toward Richard, closing the distance until I am standing inches from the man who forced me to call him father. You didn't pay a dime for my existence, Richard, I say, making sure my voice carries to every corner of the reception hall. You stole my wages from the diner I worked at when I was 16 to pay for Andre's private school tuition. You made me cook every meal, scrub every floor, and manage every bill in your house for 2 decades because you were too lazy to hire real help. You didn't keep me off the streets. You kept me as an indentured servant so you could afford to play rich. Richard recoils as if physically struck his face, turning a sickly shade of gray. Brenda covers her mouth, her eyes darting frantically around the room, realizing that their carefully constructed image is unraveling in front of Boston's most influential families. Andre tries to intervene again, lunging toward me. "Shut your mouth, you jealous lying servant," he snarls, raising a hand. Before he can move another inch, Harrison's private security detail, 2 large men in dark suits, who had been standing discreetly near the exits, close in blocking Andre's path. Harrison raises a hand, signaling them to hold. He turns back to Richard and Brenda, his expression turning from shock to a cold, terrifying fury. He reaches into the inside pocket of his tailored suit jacket and pulls out his wallet. His hands are trembling not with fear, but with the adrenaline of a man who has spent decades hunting for a ghost and has just found her serving appetizers. He extracts a folded, faded piece of paper. It looks like a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, its edges frayed from years of being handled. He walks over to the head table, ignoring the scattered flowers and spilled champagne, and slams the clipping down flat onto the pristine white tablecloth. "Look at it," Harrison commands, his voice dropping to a gravelly, authoritative register that brooks no argument. "Look at the date. Look at the face." The room holds its collective breath as Richard and Brenda hesitantly lean forward to look at the clipping. I step closer, peering over their shoulders. It is a front-page article from 33 years ago. The headline screams in bold black letters, "Laurent heiress abducted. Massive reward offered for safe return." Beneath the headline is a photograph of an African-American woman in her late 20s, elegant and poised, holding a small baby. The resemblance is not just striking, it is undeniable. The woman in the faded photograph has my exact jawline, the same slope of the cheekbones, the identical distinct birthmark just below her left ear. She is a carbon copy of my face. Brenda lets out a strangled gasp, stumbling backward until she hits a chair. She stares at the clipping as if it were a live snake. "It's a coincidence," she shrieks, her voice cracking, desperation bleeding through the panic. "It means nothing. There are millions of people in the world who look alike. We adopted her legally. We have the papers, we can prove it." Harrison's eyes narrow, his gaze locking onto Brenda with the intensity of a prosecutor who has just caught a witness in a perjury trap. "I was the junior prosecutor assigned to the Laurent case 33 years ago," he says, slowly letting every word sink in. "I spent 5 years staring at that photograph, interviewing suspects, tracking leads that led nowhere. I know every detail of that case file. I know the exact shape of that birthmark." Andre, still trying to grasp the reality of the situation, shakes his head vigorously. "This is insane. You're insane. You're letting a crazy conspiracy theory ruin my wedding. Chloe, let's go. We're leaving." He grabs Chloe's arm, trying to pull her away from the table, but she rips her arm out of his grasp with surprising force. "Don't touch me," she says, her voice shaking. "Look at her, Andre. Look at the photo. She's identical." Harrison doesn't wait for Andre to process the truth. He pulls out his cell phone and dials a number, putting it on speakerphone and placing it on the table next to the faded clipping. The phone rings twice before a voice answers. "Director's office." "This is Harrison Sterling," Harrison says, his voice unwavering. "Get the regional FBI director on the line immediately. I don't care what he's doing. Interrupt him." "Sir, the director is in a meeting. Tell him I just found the Laurent baby." Harrison interrupts, his eyes never leaving Brenda's terrified face. "And tell him to send a rapid response team to the club. We have a flight risk." The realization of what is happening finally hits Brenda. The facade completely shatters. She lets out a panicked wail, grabbing Richard by the arm and pulling him toward the side exit leading to the kitchen. "We have to go, Richard. Now we have to leave." She turns and sprints for the doors, abandoning all pretense of dignity, pushing past a startled waiter. But in her blind panic, her expensive designer heel catches on the edge of the dance floor. She pitches forward, arms flailing wildly as she loses her balance. With a sickening thud, she crashes face first into the five-tier wedding cake, sending layers of buttercream frosting, delicate sugar flowers, and heavy cake flying across the room, collapsing into a messy, humiliating heap on the floor. The impact sounds like a wet, heavy thud followed immediately by the sickening crunch of collapsing sugar and structural dowels. Brenda thrashes blindly in the ruins of the five-tier vanilla bean and raspberry cake. Her designer silk gown is instantly plastered with thick white buttercream and crushed fondant orchids. She slides frantically against the polished marble floor trying to gain traction, but the slick frosting acts like grease. She looks absolutely pathetic, flailing in the ruins of the luxury she values above all else. Harrison Sterling does not blink. He does not offer a hand to help her up. Instead, he signals to his private security detail. Two towering men in dark suits immediately move to the heavy oak double doors of the reception hall, pulling them shut and standing firmly in front of the brass handles. The sharp click of the deadbolts echoes through the room. A collective murmur of panic ripples through the wealthy guests. Socialites in evening gowns and businessmen in tailored tuxedos begin pulling out their phones, but the heavy mahogany walls of the country club suddenly feel very much like a prison. Richard scrambles on his hands and knees, slipping in the cake batter, trying to pull Brenda to her feet. He is wheezing, his face a terrifying shade of crimson. He barks at the country club manager to open the doors, but the manager takes one look at Harrison and wisely chooses to step back into the shadows. Sirens begin to wail in the distance. They start as a faint hum over the manicured golf course outside, but rapidly amplify into a deafening chorus of approaching law enforcement. The red and blue flashing lights cut through the sheer curtains, painting the shocked faces of the wedding guests in alternating strokes of neon. Andre finally snaps out of his stunned paralysis. But he does not look at his mother struggling on the floor. He does not look at the newspaper clipping holding the face of a kidnapped heiress. He marches straight toward me. His fists are balled at his sides, and a vein throbs violently in his forehead. He invades my personal space, leaning down to point a shaking finger directly between my eyes. "You ruined it!" he screams, a visceral, childish roar of pure entitlement. "You ruined the most important day of my entire life with your desperate need for attention. You could not stand watching me succeed, could you? You just had to make a scene." For 35 years, that exact tone of voice would have made me shrink. For 3.5 decades, I would have lowered my eyes, apologized, and immediately grabbed a towel to clean up the mess. I would have folded myself into the smallest, most invisible version of myself just to keep the peace. But today, I do not shrink. I do not look away. I stand up straight, rolling my shoulders back and feeling the absolute power of my own hidden empire surging through my veins. I look directly into Andre's furious eyes, and for the first time in my entire life, I smile at him. It is a slow, terrifyingly calm smile. The kind of smile that tells a predator they have just walked into a cage. Andre falters. The finger pointing at my face wavers. He has never seen me smile like this. He has only ever known the submissive, obedient maid who cooked his meals and washed his clothes. My absolute lack of fear short-circuits his brain. The heavy double doors swing open with violent force. A dozen federal agents wearing dark windbreakers with FBI emblazoned across the back pour into the reception hall. They move with terrifying coordinated speed. The room erupts into a cacophony of gasps and startled cries from the guests. Two agents flank Richard and Brenda, pulling them up from the floor. Brenda is weeping hysterically, leaving smears of frosting on the agent's sleeves as they march her and Richard out of the main hall and shove them roughly into the adjacent bridal suite for immediate questioning. A third agent, a tall woman with sharp, intelligent eyes, walks briskly past Andre and approaches me. She carries a small, sterile plastic kit. She looks at me with a profound, strange reverence. It is a look of deep respect, a stark contrast to the disgusted glances my false family has shot at me all night. "Ma'am," the agent says, her voice steady and professional. "Judge Sterling contacted our regional director. We have a portable rapid DNA sequencing unit in the mobile command center outside. We need a buccal swab to expedite the familial match against the federal database. I nod once. I open my mouth and allow her to run the long cotton swab along the inside of my cheek. It takes less than 5 seconds. The agent seals the sample in a biohazard tube, gives me a reassuring nod, and sprints back out the door. Andre watches this entire exchange, and his fragile ego completely shatters. His brain rejects the reality playing out in front of him. He desperately tries to assert the only dominance he knows. He snaps his fingers loudly right in my face. I do not know what kind of sick prank this is. He hisses, his breath smelling of stale champagne and panic. But you need to get a mop, clean up my mother, and get back to the kitchen. You stay out of rich folks' business, Tasha. You are nothing but the help. Go do your job before I make sure you end up on the street tonight. I do not argue with him. I do not raise my voice. I simply turn my back on him. I walk away, leaving him sputtering in mid-sentence. I do not head toward the kitchen. I walk deliberately, slowly, and purposefully right up to the spectacular head table. I pull out the plush velvet chair meant for the groom. I smooth down the skirt of my cheap black uniform, and I sit down right in the center of the display. Chloe, who is sitting 2 chairs away, stares at me with wide, terrified eyes. She clutches her expensive lace gown, looking entirely out of her depth. I reach across the pristine white tablecloth. I grab the heavy green bottle of vintage Dom Perignon champagne that was reserved exclusively for the bridal toast. I pull a crystal flute toward me and pour myself a generous glass. The pale golden liquid bubbles and fizzes, catching the light of the crystal chandeliers. Andre practically trips over his own feet, rushing to the table. His eyes bug out of his head, watching me sip his expensive champagne. "Have you lost your mind?" he shouts, slamming his hands down on the table, making the silverware rattle. "Get out of my chair. You are completely done, Tasha. I am kicking you out of the basement apartment tonight. I am cutting off your grocery allowance. You will have absolutely nothing by tomorrow morning. You will be begging me for a job." I take another slow, deliberate sip of the champagne. It tastes crisp, cold, and absolutely magnificent. I let his threats wash over me like warm rain. He thinks he holds my financial survival in his hands. He thinks the pitiful basement apartment and the meager allowance they gave me from my own stolen wages are my only lifelines. He has no idea that my culinary consulting empire generated more revenue last quarter than he has seen in his entire life. He has no idea that I could buy this country club in cash tomorrow if I felt like it. "You should really save your breath, Andre," I say, my voice ringing with absolute authority. "You are going to need it for the federal prosecutors." The minutes drag by like hours. The room remains in a state of suspended animation. The wealthy guests huddle in small groups, whispering furiously and glancing at me sitting at the head table, drinking champagne like a queen on a throne. Harrison Sterling stands near the bridal suite doors, his arms crossed, a stoic sentinel waiting for the final confirmation of his life's work. The heavy oak doors of the bridal suite finally swing open. The lead investigator steps back into the main hall, holding a digital tablet in his right hand. The entire room goes dead silent once again. The remaining federal agents push Richard and Brenda out of the suite behind him. They are no longer just being detained. Their hands are securely locked in heavy steel handcuffs behind their backs. Brenda's face is a mask of ruined makeup and pure terror. Richard is weeping openly, his chest heaving with defeated sobs. The investigator does not look at Andre. He does not look at Chloe. He looks right past me, locking his hard, uncompromising gaze onto Richard and Brenda. He raises the tablet. The rapid test confirms a direct familial match to the Josephine Laurent profile in the federal database. The investigator announces, his voice projecting clearly across the massive room. He steps forward, closing the distance to the 2 people who stole my life. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The metallic click of the heavy steel handcuffs is the sharpest sound in the entire reception hall. It slices through the heavy silence like a blade. Brenda lets out a blood-curdling scream that tears through the sophisticated ambiance of the country club. It is not a cry of sorrow or a plea for mercy. It is a shriek of pure, humiliated rage. She thrashes violently against the federal agents, her pristine designer gown ruined, smearing thick white sugar paste and crushed raspberry filling across their dark tactical jackets. The polished upper-middle-class matriarch who spent decades meticulously curating an image of absolute perfection is now a struggling, sticky mess, being forcibly marched toward the exit. Richard does not fight back. He collapses inward like a deflated balloon. He is hyperventilating so severely that an agent has to grip him by the collar of his expensive tuxedo just to keep him from dropping to his knees. His face is drained of all blood, his mouth opening and closing silently as he stares at the polished marble floor. The elite guests of Boston high society, the people Richard and Brenda spent their entire lives trying to impress and emulate, watch the spectacle in absolute unblinking horror. The whispers spread like wildfire through the crowd. The illusion is entirely shredded. They are not respectable socialites. They are criminals being hauled away in front of 100 horrified witnesses, their legacy turning to ash in a matter of seconds. Andre watches his parents being dragged through the heavy oak double doors. His chest heaves, but his brain refuses to process the reality of the situation. Instead of accepting the facts, he pivots and channels every ounce of his crumbling reality into a blistering attack on me. He marches back to the head table, his fists clenched tight enough to turn his knuckles white, his face a mask of furious, desperate denial. He points a shaking finger directly at my chest, completely ignoring the federal agents still securing the perimeter. "You are going to pay for this!" He spits, his voice dripping with absolute venom. "I do not care what kind of fake test they just ran in that truck outside. I do not care what kind of elaborate lie you spun to Harrison. You are nothing but a jealous, ungrateful maid who could not stand to see me happy." I remain seated in his velvet chair, slowly swirling the vintage champagne in my crystal flute. I do not flinch. I do not break eye contact. "I am cutting you off right now." Andre continues, his voice rising in volume as he tries to perform for the lingering guests and his terrified bride. "You are completely done. I am changing the locks on the basement apartment tonight. You can pack your pathetic little bags and sleep on the street. I am canceling your grocery allowance. I am making sure you never get another single cent from this family. You will have absolutely nothing by tomorrow morning. You will be begging me for a job just to afford a bus ticket out of town." He is breathing heavily, thoroughly convinced he still holds the ultimate power over my life. He genuinely believes that the dingy, damp basement I was banished to, and the meager stipend they gave me from my own stolen wages, are the only things keeping me alive. He is clinging to the delusion of his supremacy, because it is the only raft he has left in a rapidly sinking ship. He needs to believe I am beneath him, so he does not have to face the fact that he is entirely powerless. I take one final slow sip of the vintage champagne, letting the crisp, expensive taste linger on my tongue before I set the crystal flute down on the pristine tablecloth. Then I laugh. It starts as a low rumble in my chest and builds into a bright, unapologetic sound that rings loudly through the tense silence of the reception hall. It is a laugh of pure, unadulterated freedom. Andre recoils, his eyes widening in deep confusion. "What is so funny?" he demands, his voice cracking under the strain of his fading authority. I stand up. I smooth out the wrinkles in my cheap black server uniform, rolling my shoulders back and stepping out from behind the head table. I walk right up to him, entirely unbothered by his height or his aggressive posture. "You are going to kick me out of the basement, Andre?" I ask, keeping my tone conversational, almost light, highlighting the absolute absurdity of his threats. "You are going to cut off my allowance and throw me on the street?" "Yes," he snaps, trying to puff his chest out again to reclaim his dominance. "You are out on the street tonight. You are finished." I tilt my head, looking at him with deep, profound pity. "Andre, I moved out of that moldy basement 3 years ago." I tell him, my voice steady and resonant, echoing so the guests standing nearby can hear every word. I have been paying a local college student a few bucks a week to pick up the mail and turn the lights on just to keep Brenda and Richard off my back. I have not touched a single dime of that pathetic grocery allowance since I was 25. His brow furrows, his brain visibly struggling to compute the new information. Then where do you live? He stammers, his aggressive facade slipping slightly. How are you paying for anything? I ignore his question. Instead, I raise my right hand and snap my fingers twice in the air. It is the exact same dismissive, arrogant gesture Brenda used on me in the kitchen an hour ago. Immediately, the heavy swinging doors to the country club kitchen push wide open. The head chef, a towering man with a meticulous white coat and decades of culinary experience, steps out into the reception hall. He is followed seamlessly by the sous chefs, the prep cooks, and the entire serving staff. These are the very people Andre has been snapping at all evening, the people he treated like absolute garbage, calling them slow and demanding they stay out of sight so they would not offend his new wealthy in-laws. They march out in a unified, disciplined formation, standing in a silent, highly respectful line directly behind me. Andre, I say, gesturing to the incredible team assembled at my back. You spent this entire evening showing off this luxury catering company to Chloe's family. You bragged to anyone who would listen about the intricate fusion menu. You told Harrison that securing this specific, highly sought-after catering team was a mark of your exquisite taste and high status. Andre swallows hard, his eyes darting frantically from the towering chef to me. What does that have to do with anything, he asks, defensively, taking a small, unconscious step backward. I take a step closer, ensuring my words land with maximum devastating impact. It has everything to do with it, Andre. Because I do not just work for this catering company, I own it. Andre's jaw practically hits the polished marble floor. All the remaining color drains from his face, leaving him looking like a hollow, empty shell of a man. His mouth opens and closes repeatedly, but he cannot form a single coherent word. The realization hits him with the blunt force of a freight train. The luxury service he used to flaunt his fake wealth, the exquisite menu he used to impress high society, is actually the empire built by the sister he treated like a slave. Behind me, the head chef steps forward. He does not look at Andre. He looks directly at me, his posture straight and immensely respectful. We have packed up the remaining ingredients and secured the kitchen equipment, boss. He says, his deep voice carrying clearly across the silent room. We are ready to load the trucks and head back to headquarters whenever you give the word. The rest of the wait staff, the very people Andre verbally abused for hours, all nod in unison, their eyes locked on me with absolute unwavering loyalty. They stand tall, completely dropping the subservient act they were hired to perform for these entitled guests. I turn my gaze toward Chloe. The wealthy, beautiful bride is still clutching her heavy lace gown, but the sheer terror in her eyes has been replaced by something much sharper. She looks at the dedicated professional staff standing behind me, then looks back at the man she almost married. She sees the sweat beading on Andre's forehead, the blind panic in his eyes, the absolute, irreversible destruction of his fraudulent identity. Chloe looks at Andre with pure, unmasked disgust, realizing she almost tied her life to a desperate, pathetic fraud who does not even own the catering he tried to claim credit for. The sterile hum of the federal building's air conditioning replaces the chaotic symphony of shattered glass and screaming guests. 48 hours have passed since the wedding reception imploded. I am sitting in a windowless debriefing room on the 7th floor of the FBI field office in downtown Boston. The walls are soundproofed concrete painted a clinical shade of gray. The stainless steel table is cold beneath my fingertips. Harrison Sterling sits beside me. He looks exhausted, the deep lines around his mouth far more pronounced than they were at the country club, but his posture is unyielding. He has barely slept since the moment he recognized my face through the lens of his vintage camera. He refused to leave my side, acting as an unofficial legal shield and a fierce ally while the federal investigators dismantled the entire false reality of my existence. Special Agent Vance, the lead investigator who authorized the rapid DNA test, walks into the room carrying a stack of thick manila folders. He drops them onto the metal table with a heavy, definitive thud. The sound makes my chest tighten. Those folders hold the complete autopsy of my stolen life. We broke them, Vance says, taking a seat opposite us. His voice is flat and entirely professional, devoid of any bedside manner. Richard folded after 6 hours in holding. Brenda held out a bit longer, but once we presented the financial forensic reports, she collapsed entirely. They confessed to the core charges, but the actual mechanics of the crime are far more twisted than we originally anticipated. I brace myself, keeping my spine completely straight. I built an empire from scratch while living in a damp basement. I can handle whatever is in those files. Tell me everything I command. Vance opens the first folder, sliding a photograph of Richard and Brenda taken 33 years ago toward me. They look haggard, desperate, and remarkably ordinary. They did not mastermind your kidnapping? Tasha Vance explains, tapping the photograph. 33 years ago, they were broke. They were drowning in insurmountable gambling debts and facing severe legal trouble for a string of petty check fraud schemes. They were opportunistic bottom feeders. Harrison leans forward, his legal instincts kicking in immediately. Then how did they end up with the heir to the Laurent fortune? The actual kidnappers needed a firewall. Vance continues, pulling out a series of yellowed banking documents. They executed a highly sophisticated extraction of the Laurent baby, but the heat from federal law enforcement was too intense. They needed to stash the child with a family that had absolutely no connections to the criminal underworld or high society. A completely invisible, unremarkable suburban couple. They found Richard and Brenda. Vance slides a heavily redacted offshore bank statement across the table. The kidnappers brokered a deal. They handed you over to Richard and Brenda along with access to a massive blind trust fund. It was essentially hush money. The arrangement was simple. Keep the child alive, keep her hidden in plain sight, and in exchange they received a monthly untraceable stipend that equated to tens of millions of dollars over the course of 3 decades. The air is completely sucked out of my lungs. I stare at the string of zeros printed on the banking ledger. I do not feel sad. I feel a white-hot, blistering rage igniting in my chest. They were paid to raise me, I say, my voice dangerously calm. They were paid a fortune, Vance corrects me. But they did not use a single cent of that money on you. The forensic accounting team just finished mapping the routing numbers. The trust fund was designed to cover your tracks, but Richard and Brenda weaponized it to build a fabricated upper-middle-class dynasty for their biological son. Vance opens the largest folder in the stack and begins laying out glossy receipts, tuition statements, and property deeds like a morbid deck of cards. He points to a receipt dated from when I was 10 years old. This is the tuition payment for Andre's exclusive private preparatory school, Vance says. It was paid directly from a shell account linked to your biological family's stolen wealth. He slides another document forward. This is the deed to the luxury vehicle Andre received for his 16th birthday. Paid in cash from your fund, the country club memberships, the custom-tailored suits, the down payment on the catering company he tried to claim as his own business venture. Every single luxury Andre ever enjoyed, every status symbol he ever flaunted, was purchased with your blood money. I stare at the documents, the sheer audacity of their cruelty locking my jaw tight. For 23 years they forced me to scrub their floors. They made me cook their extravagant meals. They housed me in an unfinished freezing basement and told me I was a charity case. They looked me dead in the eye and told me that some people are simply born to serve, actively crushing my self-esteem so I would never question my place in the world. They convinced me I was a burden, an unwanted stray they graciously allowed to eat their scraps. Meanwhile, they were literally draining my identity to treat Andre like a royal prince. The arrogance of it is staggering. They stole my biological family's wealth to fund a golden pedestal for a deeply mediocre, talentless man. Harrison shakes his head in absolute disgust. It is the most heinous case of financial and emotional parasitism I have ever witnessed in my entire legal career. They treated you as an indentured servant while living off your ransom. The rage inside me does not break me. It hardens me. It calcifies my resolve into pure diamond. I think about the years I spent waking up at dawn to bake bread, saving pennies from my minimum wage jobs, hiding my culinary studies, and quietly building my consulting firm in the shadows. I built real, undeniable wealth entirely on my own merit, completely devoid of the millions they stole from me. My empire is authentic. Andre's entire existence is a stolen, fragile illusion. Are Richard and Brenda going to prison? I ask, my eyes locking onto Vance. They are never seeing the light of day again, Vance answers without hesitation. The money laundering, the kidnapping by proxy, the federal wire fraud. We have them dead to rights. They are currently sitting in federal holding cells waiting for their arraignment. And Andre, I press, needing to know the exact status of the golden child. Vance sighs, closing the heavy folders. Andre is a different story. He was a beneficiary of the fraud, but we do not have concrete evidence yet that he knew the true origin of the money. He was brought in for questioning, but he played the victim card perfectly. He claimed he had absolutely no idea you were kidnapped or that his lifestyle was funded by a stolen trust. Because the core crimes occurred before he was an adult, we had to grant him bail on the accessory charges while the investigation continues. He posted bond 2 hours ago. He is back on the street, Harrison says, his jaw clenching with frustration. He is broke. His assets are frozen, but he is walking around. Suddenly, the sharp, persistent buzzing of my cell phone breaks the heavy tension in the debriefing room. I pull it out of my tailored suit pocket. An unknown number flashes on the screen. Vance gives me a sharp nod, signaling me to answer. He taps his own phone silently, indicating that they will trace and monitor the call. I swipe the screen and raise the phone to my ear. Yes, I answer, my voice projecting absolute authority. Tasha. It is Andre. His voice crackles through the speaker. He sounds ragged, out of breath, and entirely desperate, but the familiar grating undertone of his toxic arrogance is still there. He refuses to let go of the hierarchy he was raised to believe in. I do not say anything. I simply let the silence stretch, forcing him to fill the void. Look, my accounts are frozen! Andre barks, his panic bleeding through his false bravado. The feds locked everything down. Chloe is not answering my calls, and her father's security team threatened to break my legs if I step foot near their estate. I need cash, Tasha. I need you to help me fix this mess you started. The delusion is absolutely breathtaking. He is out on bail for living off my stolen ransom, and he is demanding that I fix the situation. You want my help, Andre? I ask, keeping my tone perfectly even. Yes. He snaps, his entitlement overriding his common sense. You owe us. We put a roof over your head for 35 years. You need to sign an affidavit saying my parents treated you well. You need to tell the feds I had nothing to do with this so Chloe will take me back. We need to meet. Right now. Give me the address to that fake little apartment you claim you live in. He still does not believe it. He still thinks the catering company reveal was a fluke, a temporary disruption in his perfect universe. He still believes I am the helpless maid living in squalor. I look at Vance. The federal agent smirks, giving me a thumbs up. I look at Harrison, who nods slowly, a fierce, predatory gleam in his eyes. Fine, Andre. I say, my voice dropping to a silken, dangerous whisper. We can meet. I will text you the address to my residence. Make sure you dress nicely. The building has a very strict dress code for guests. I hang up the phone before he can utter another command. I type out the address to my sprawling, multi-million-dollar penthouse in the financial district. I hit send. The trap is perfectly set. The heavy oak doors of my penthouse close behind me, sealing off the distant noise of the Boston financial district below. I walk across the imported Brazilian hardwood floors, my heels clicking with a sharp, rhythmic authority that echoes powerfully through the cavernous space. For years I was conditioned to walk softly, to tiptoe around the edges of rooms, so I would not disturb Richard and Brenda. I was taught to be invisible, a ghost in my own supposed home. Now I own the entire top floor of one of the most exclusive high-rises in the city. The floor-to-ceiling windows offer a panoramic, breathtaking view of the skyline, casting abundant natural light across my curated collection of modern African-American art and bespoke furniture. Every single inch of this space is a testament to my resilience and my absolute refusal to be broken. I do not change out of my tailored power suit. I want Andre to see exactly who he is dealing with when he walks through those doors. I walk over to the massive white marble kitchen island. This island is the heart of my culinary consulting empire. It is where I test recipes that generate millions of dollars in corporate revenue. It is a stark, violent contrast to the cramped, greasy corner of the kitchen where Brenda used to force me to scrub pots and pans until my knuckles bled and my back ached. I place my hands flat on the cool marble, taking a deep, grounding breath. I alert the building concierge to grant access to a man named Andre, but I explicitly instruct my private security detail to monitor the internal cameras and remain on standby just outside the main corridor. I know exactly how volatile Andre can become when his fragile reality is challenged, and I'm leaving absolutely nothing to chance today. 30 minutes later, a soft electronic chime signals the arrival of the private elevator opening directly into my foyer. The brushed steel doors slide apart, and Andre steps out into my world. The sight of him is almost comical, a devastating portrait of a man rapidly losing his mind. The flawless, polished prince of the family is completely gone. He is wearing the exact same designer suit he had on at the country club, but it is severely wrinkled and stained with nervous sweat. His expensive silk tie is missing, and the top buttons of his dress shirt are torn open. His eyes are bloodshot, darting frantically around the expansive luxury of my foyer, taking in the vaulted ceilings and the minimalist perfection. For a fraction of a second, I see absolute awe on his face as he processes the sheer magnitude of the wealth surrounding him. But his toxic ego works overtime to protect him from the truth. The awe instantly curdles into a sneer of deep misogynistic disgust. He aggressively rejects the evidence in front of his own eyes. "Who are you sleeping with to get access to a place like this?" Andre barks, stepping heavily onto the hardwood floor and invading my space with his loud, grating voice. "Did you rent this for the afternoon just to play pretend Tasha? Do you think sitting in a rich man's apartment makes you a boss? You are pathetic. You are just playing dress-up in someone else's house." He is projecting his own fraudulent existence directly onto me. He literally cannot comprehend that a black woman, the sister he treated as an unpaid servant for decades, could possess the intellect and the relentless drive to acquire this kind of wealth legally and independently. He desperately needs me to be a fraud, so he does not have to face the fact that he is the actual parasite. I do not offer him a drink. I do not invite him to sit down on my custom leather furniture. I simply stand behind the marble island, letting my complete silence magnify his manic, unhinged energy. "I am not here to play your stupid games," Andre snaps, marching toward the kitchen island. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a crumpled piece of paper, slamming it down onto the marble surface with excessive, unnecessary force. "The feds have frozen all of my bank accounts. Every single one of my business accounts is locked. My black credit cards are declining at the coffee shop. The locks on my luxury condo have been changed by federal marshals, and they will not even let me get my watches. Chloe will not return any of my text messages, and Harrison's security team physically threw me off their estate property when I tried to go see her this morning." He points a shaking finger at the crumpled paper on the counter. "That is a sworn affidavit. My public defender drafted it this morning because I cannot even afford a real lawyer right now. It explicitly states that Richard and Brenda provided a loving, stable home for you. It states that they clothed you, fed you, and treated you as an equal member of our family. It completely clears me of any knowledge regarding whatever insane conspiracy theory you fed to the FBI about a stolen trust fund." I look down at the crumpled paper. The sheer audacity required to draft a document filled with such blatant, transparent lies is staggering. "They did not clothe me, Andre." I say, my voice dropping to a dangerously calm register that makes him flinch. "They gave me Brenda's discarded rags and whatever clearance items they could find. They did not feed me. I cooked every gourmet meal you ever consumed while I ate cold leftovers standing over the sink. They did not treat me as an equal. They kept me in an unfinished concrete basement that flooded every winter while you slept in a California king bed." Andre slams his fist against the marble island, causing a heavy thud to echo through the pristine penthouse. "You owe us!" He screams, a thick vein bulging prominently on his neck as his face turns bright red. "We took you in. You could have been dead in a ditch somewhere, but my parents gave you a roof over your head. You owe us your life, Tasha. You are going to sign that piece of paper right now. You are going to pick up your phone, call Chloe, and tell her this was all a massive misunderstanding. You are going to fix my life because you are the one who ruined it. He rounds the corner of the kitchen island, stepping aggressively into my personal space. He is trying to use his height to tower over me, utilizing the exact same physical intimidation tactics he has relied on since we were teenagers. He breathes heavily, his fists clenched at his sides. He thinks if he gets close enough, if he shouts loud enough, the conditioned fear will take over, and I will instinctively submit to his demands just to keep the peace. But the woman standing in front of him is no longer the terrified girl trapped in a damp basement. I am a titan in my own right. I do not take a single step backward. I look him dead in the eye, unblinking and entirely unmoved by his desperate, aggressive posturing. I let him see the absolute contempt I hold for him. You do not have any power here, Andre, I say, my voice slicing through his frantic energy like a surgical blade. You are standing in a multi-million-dollar penthouse that I purchased in cash using money I earned with my own two hands. You are wearing a suit bought with funds stolen from my biological family. You are completely and entirely hollow. You have never earned a single thing in your entire miserable existence. You are a fraud, Andre. Everything you touch is a lie. He freezes. His chest heaves rapidly as my words strike the deepest, most fragile core of his profound insecurities. He raises his right hand slightly as if he is actually going to strike me, but he catches the cold, unforgiving warning blazing in my eyes. He knows if he touches me, he will not make it out of this building conscious. My security team is waiting just outside the doors, ready to neutralize him at a moment's notice. You want to know exactly how much you owe me, Andre? I ask, keeping my unyielding gaze locked onto his terrified, sweating face. I reach into the sleek, leather briefcase resting on the designer stool beside me. I bypass the pens and digital tablets, reaching straight for the bottom. I pull out a thick, heavy financial dossier. It is bound in a sturdy black cover and stamped with the unmistakable bright red seal of a federal forensic accounting audit. The weight of the document is substantial, representing decades of theft and deception. I do not break eye contact as I lift the heavy dossier. I place it firmly onto the pristine marble surface, letting the sound ground the moment in absolute reality. With one swift, deliberate motion, I slide the thick red stamped financial dossier across the kitchen island directly into his shaking hands. Andre stares down at the thick black folder resting against his sweating palms. The bright red federal seal stamped across the cover seems to burn a hole straight through his fragile bravado. He swallows hard, his Adam's apple bobbing erratically. For a moment, the silence in the penthouse is absolute, broken only by the distant hum of city traffic far below. He does not want to open it. Every instinct in his pampered, deeply insulated brain is screaming at him to turn around and run back to the safety of his delusions, back to the lies Brenda and Richard fed him since birth. But his desperation anchors him to the floor. He needs me to sign that fake affidavit to save his relationship with Chloe, and he knows he cannot leave without it. Open it, Andre, I say, my voice ringing with a cold, terrifying calm. Open it and look at exactly how much of a self-made man you really are. Let us examine the brilliant business acumen you love to brag about at country club dinners. His trembling fingers fumble with the heavy clasp. He flips the cover back, revealing hundreds of pages of densely packed spreadsheets. Bank routing numbers, offshore account details, and highlighted wire transfers. The Federal Forensic Accounting Team did not miss a single cent. They mapped 3 decades of financial parasitism with surgical precision, tracing the flow of stolen wealth through a labyrinth of shell companies directly into his pockets. Page 4. I instruct, leaning slightly over the cool marble island. Look at the highlighted section from 20 years ago. You remember that summer, do you not? Brenda and Richard told everyone they had a massive return on a speculative real estate investment. They bought you that brand new, fully loaded BMW SUV for your 16th birthday, the one you crashed into a street lamp 2 months later, because you were driving drunk. They told me that same week they could not afford to buy me a winter coat, so I walked to high school in a threadbare sweater, shivering until my lips turned blue. I scrubbed the floors of that house until my hands blistered to earn my keep while you tossed your keys to the valet. Andre's eyes scan the page. The color drains further from his face, leaving him a sickly ashen gray. That vehicle was not purchased with real estate profits. I continue striking him with the undeniable facts, hammering each word like a nail into his coffin. It was purchased directly from a shell account in the Cayman Islands. An account established by the people who stole me from my biological family. An account designed to pay Richard and Brenda to keep me hidden and enslaved. Every gallon of gas you put in that car, every speeding ticket they paid off for you was funded by my ransom. He flips the page rapidly, shaking his head in frantic, wide-eyed denial. This is fabricated. You hacked these documents. You paid someone to print this garbage just to mess with my head. You are trying to ruin me because you are jealous. Keep turning the pages, I command, raising my voice just enough to assert total dominance over his pathetic protests. Go to page 42. Look at the seed capital for your brilliant tech startup. The one you launched right after graduating from that expensive private university I paid for. The company that went bankrupt in 18 months because you spent the investment funds on luxury vacations to Dubai, tailored Italian suits, and bottle service at exclusive clubs. $2 million, Andre. Transferred straight from the principal balance of my stolen legacy into your personal business account. You are not a businessman. You have never been a businessman. You are a leech who attached yourself to my bloodline and drained me dry. His breathing grows shallow and ragged. He is hyperventilating, his eyes darting across the irrefutable proof of his complete mediocrity. The walls of his false reality are closing in on him. He tries to shut the heavy folder, desperate to hide the numbers, but I reach across the island and slam my hand down on the cover, forcing it to stay open. We are not done. I whisper, my tone lethal and uncompromising. Turn to page 89. The most recent transaction. The one that matters right now. The one that is going to end your entire future. He turns the pages with clumsy, uncoordinated movements. His hands are shaking so badly, he tears the edge of the heavy stock paper. His eyes lock onto a massive wire transfer executed just 6 months ago. The amount is precisely $150,000. The recipient is a high-end exclusive diamond jeweler in the Diamond District of New York. The memo line simply reads, "Custom engagement ring." His head snaps up. His eyes meet mine, filled with absolute devastating horror. He finally understands the magnitude of his ruin. Yes, I say, letting a sharp, ruthless smile curve my lips. Chloe's custom-cut, flawless diamond engagement ring. The ring you presented to her on that chartered yacht, bragging to her influential family about how you designed it yourself, how you worked so incredibly hard to afford the perfect symbol of your eternal love. You did not buy that ring, Andre. I bought that ring. My kidnapped existence paid for the massive diamond currently sitting on your wealthy fiancé's finger. You proposed to a woman from a prominent judicial family using stolen laundered money. You dragged a federal judge's daughter into a massive financial crime. The illusion completely shatters. The foundational lie of his entire 33 years of existence crumbles into dust right in front of me. He is not a prince. He is not a genius entrepreneur destined for greatness. He is a pathetic, unremarkable fraud who would have been absolutely nothing without the trauma inflicted upon me. The weight of this reality crashes down on him, crushing his toxic ego under tons of undeniable proof. He cannot escape the numbers. He cannot gaslight a federal forensic audit. He snaps. The polished upper-crust facade breaks apart, revealing the spoiled, violent child underneath. He lets out a guttural, animalistic scream of pure rage. He grabs the heavy financial dossier with both hands and hurls it violently across the kitchen. It hits the stainless steel double-door refrigerator with a loud, ringing crash. The binding splits and hundreds of pages burst into the air, fluttering down to the Brazilian hardwood floor like dead leaves scattered by a storm. "This is a lie," he shrieks, spittle flying from his lips as he steps aggressively toward the marble island, his chest heaving. "You are trying to frame me. You set this up with Harrison because you have always been a bitter, pathetic maid who wants to drag me down to your miserable, lowly level. My parents are innocent. I am innocent. You are a liar, Tasha. You are nothing but a liar trying to steal my life. I do not flinch. I stand perfectly still, letting his furious tantrum wash over me. It is the pathetic flailing of a drowning man fighting the inevitable tide. He is throwing a tantrum because his entire identity has been violently ripped away, leaving him naked and exposed to the truth. I look at him with deep, profound pity, the kind of pity reserved for a small, insignificant pest. I remember all the times he snapped his fingers at me, all the times he ordered me to clean his room, all the times he called me slow and stupid in front of his friends. All of that power was an illusion paid for with my blood. You can scream until your lungs bleed, Andre. I say, my voice perfectly steady and completely unbothered by his outburst. It does not change the routing numbers. It does not change the rapid DNA test currently sitting in an evidence locker. It does not change the fact that the federal government is currently seizing every single asset your parents ever purchased. Every bank account, every vehicle, every property is gone. You have absolutely nothing. You are absolutely nothing. You are just a man standing in a suit he cannot afford, screaming at the woman who unwittingly bought it for him. He grips the edge of the marble island, his knuckles stark white, his head hanging low between his shoulders as he struggles to drag air into his panicked lungs. He looks completely broken, a ruined man staring into the pitch-black abyss of his own making. He is about to beg. I can see it in the way his broad shoulders slump, in the way the aggressive, hateful fire in his eyes burns out, replaced by raw, naked terror. He is going to drop to his knees right here on my imported hardwood floor and plead with the sister he treated like garbage to save him from federal prison. He is going to ask the maid for mercy. But before he can utter a single pathetic word of surrender, the screen of my smartphone lights up on the marble counter. A sharp notification chime breaks the heavy, suffocating silence of the penthouse. The name Harrison Sterling flashes brightly across the digital display. I glance down at the screen. The text message from the retired federal judge is brief, cold, and meticulously precise. Chloe is ready. Bring him to the estate. I pick up my phone and slide it slowly into my tailored suit jacket pocket. I look up at Andre, watching the sweat drip down his ruined designer suit, watching the last remnants of his dignity drain away. I let a cold, final smile cross my face, savoring the absolute shift in our lifelong power dynamic. Pick your head up, Andre. I command, my voice ringing with undeniable, terrifying authority. Your fiancé wants to see you. The ride to the Sterling estate is suffocatingly silent. My private driver navigates the sleek luxury SUV through the winding, manicured roads of the wealthiest zip code in Massachusetts. Andre sits in the opposite corner of the spacious back seat, frantically trying to smooth out the severe wrinkles in his sweat-stained designer suit. He keeps checking his reflection in the dark screen of his dead cell phone, practicing a look of injured innocence. He is genuinely convincing himself that he can charm his way out of a federal crime. He thinks Chloe's love, or rather the illusion of love he carefully curated, will somehow override her father's ironclad legal expertise. I watch him rehearse his pathetic performance, utterly disgusted by the sheer depth of his delusion. He does not look at me once during the 45-minute drive. He cannot afford to acknowledge the reality sitting right next to him. We pull up to the massive wrought iron gates of the Sterling family estate. The gates swing open instantly, heavily guarded by Harrison's private security detail. We glide up the sweeping cobblestone driveway toward the sprawling stone manor. It is a fortress of generational wealth built on decades of prestigious legal and political power. This is the world Andre thought he belonged to. This is the dynasty he thought he had successfully infiltrated. He steps out of the SUV, adjusting his collar, plastering on that signature arrogant smile that has gotten him out of every minor scrape Brenda and Richard could pay away. But Brenda and Richard are currently wearing federal orange, and there is no stolen checkbook left to save him. Two towering security contractors escort us through the massive mahogany front doors. The grand foyer is eerily silent. We are led down a long vaulted corridor toward the formal dining room. Every footstep echoes against the imported marble floors. Andre walks with a forced swagger, clearing his throat, readying his pitch. He believes he is walking into a negotiation. He has no idea he is walking into an execution. The dining room is massive and imposing. A long, dark mahogany table stretches across the center of the room, polished to a mirror shine. At the far end sits Harrison Sterling wearing a sharp, tailored navy suit. Beside him sits Chloe. She is no longer the glowing, blushing bride I served hours ago. She is sitting rigidly upright, her posture identical to her father's. Her face is stripped of all makeup, her eyes red-rimmed, but completely dry and unyielding. The soft, forgiving woman Andre thought he could manipulate has been entirely replaced by a woman born into a family of ruthless, uncompromising litigators. Andre marches into the room and immediately goes off script. He ignores Harrison completely and makes a desperate theatrical beeline straight for Chloe. He reaches both hands across the wide mahogany table, attempting to grab her hands in a display of passionate, misunderstood devotion. "Sweetheart," he pleads, his voice dripping with manufactured desperation. "You have to listen to me. This is all a massive, insane misunderstanding. My parents are crazy. They hid everything from me. I had absolutely no idea what they did to Tasha. You know my heart. You know I am a good man. We can get through this together." Chloe does not flinch. She does not lean forward. With a swift, disgusted motion, she pulls her hands back, folding them tightly in her lap. She looks at Andre as if he is a diseased rat that just scurried across her dining table. She does not offer a single word of comfort. She does not even blink. Harrison stands up slowly, projecting a terrifying, quiet dominance. "Sit down, Andre," he commands, his voice echoing off the high ceiling. "The trial phase of this relationship is officially over. You are here for sentencing." Andre drops into the heavy wooden chair, the fake charm draining from his face as Harrison opens a sleek leather folder. Harrison does not yell. He speaks with the devastating clinical precision of a judge delivering a fatal ruling. "Your bank accounts are officially frozen," Andre Harrison states, staring him dead in the eye. "The federal authorities have seized every single asset connected to your name. Your supposed startup ventures, the companies you paraded around this house to secure my blessing for this marriage, have been completely liquidated by the government. The forensic audit confirmed that your entire business portfolio was nothing but a laundering mechanism for the ransom money stolen from Tasha's biological family. You are entirely insolvent." Andre starts shaking. He looks frantically between Chloe and Harrison. "Sir, please, I can rebuild." Andre stammers, his voice cracking. "I have the skills. I have the network. I can start over. I just need a chance to prove myself." I step forward, pulling out the chair next to Andre and sitting down with perfect posture. "You do not have a network, Andre," I say, ensuring my voice is smooth and merciless. "Your network consisted of people who tolerated you because they thought you had money. The second the federal indictments go public tomorrow morning, your name will be absolute poison in this city. No bank will ever approve you for a loan. No investor will ever take your call. You have no degree you actually earned, no skills you actually developed, and no wealthy mother to buy your way out of failure. You are a ghost." Andre turns a panicked, sweaty face back to Chloe. He is begging now, all pride abandoned. "Chloe, please," he whimpers. "I love you. The money does not matter. We can run away. We can start fresh anywhere you want. Just do not leave me." Chloe finally breaks her silence. She does not yell or cry. She reaches over with absolute chilling composure and slides a heavy crystal glass of ice water directly in front of her. She raises her left hand. The light from the chandelier catches the massive custom-cut diamond engagement ring, the ring paid for with my stolen blood money. With slow, deliberate movements, she slides the ring off her finger. She holds it suspended over the glass for a fraction of a second. Without uttering a single sound, she drops the ring into the ice water. It sinks to the bottom with a heavy, hollow clink. She looks Andre directly in his terrified, bloodshot eyes and pushes the glass across the long mahogany table toward him. "We do not marry into crime syndicates." The heavy crystal glass sits in the exact center of the dark mahogany table, condensation already beating on the thick sides. At the bottom, magnified by the cold water and floating ice cubes, Chloe's flawless custom diamond engagement ring rests like a sunken artifact from a wrecked ship. The clink of the heavy metal hitting the bottom of the glass seems to echo endlessly through the cavernous dining room. Andre stares at the submerged diamond. His chest heaves with rapid, shallow breaths. He slowly raises his head and looks up at Chloe, expecting her to break. He expects her to burst into tears to tell him this is just a terrible nightmare, to reach across the table and pull him back into the safety of her immense generational wealth. But Chloe looks back at him with eyes as hard and unyielding as the ice floating in that water. She does not offer a single ounce of pity. The pristine, upper-class etiquette that has dictated this entire high society meeting completely evaporates from Andre's body. The polite, charming entrepreneur facade is violently stripped away, leaving only the spoiled, feral, entitled child underneath. He stands up with such sudden explosive force that his heavy wooden dining chair tips backward and crashes loudly against the imported marble floor. He slams both of his fists down onto the polished dining table, rattling the fine china and sending a visible tremor through the room. He does not scream at Harrison. He does not scream at Chloe. He turns his entire body toward me, locking his bloodshot, terrified eyes onto my face. The sheer blinding hatred radiating from him is a physical force. He realizes in this singular defining moment that I am the absolute architect of his complete destruction. I am the reason the federal agents are tearing apart his parents' lives. I am the reason the golden gates of high society are slamming shut in his face forever. "You did this to me!" He roars, his voice tearing at the seams, producing a guttural, ugly sound of pure, unhinged rage. "You manipulative, jealous, pathetic maid. You could not stand watching me live the life I was meant to live. You could not stand serving me. You belong on your knees, Tasha. You belong in the kitchen scrubbing my floors and cooking my food. You are nothing but a servant. You will always be a servant. You think putting on a nice suit and stealing my money makes you powerful. You are garbage. You will always be the garbage my parents pulled out of the gutter." I do not blink. I do not raise my voice or shift in my chair. I sit perfectly still, absorbing his pathetic, venomous rant, letting him expose his true putrid character in front of the very people he spent years trying to desperately impress. His words do not hurt me. They only confirm my total, undeniable victory. The more he screams, the more he proves to Harrison and Chloe exactly what kind of monster he truly is. Andre loses the last shred of his sanity. He realizes his verbal abuse is bouncing off me like water off a stone cliff. The psychological intimidation tactics he has used on me since childhood are completely useless against a woman who built a culinary empire from nothing. He needs to physically break me to reclaim his illusion of power. He lunges. He does not just reach across the table. He scrambles onto the polished mahogany, his expensive leather shoes slipping and scratching the priceless wood. He knocks over crystal goblets, sending ice water, expensive wine, and shattered glass flying across the table. He is reaching directly for my throat, his face contorted into a hideous mask of pure, ugly violence. He wants to destroy my face, the very face that brought the federal investigators straight to his door. He never even makes it halfway across the table. Harrison Sterling does not even flinch. He simply nods his head a fraction of an inch. His private security detail, two massive men with extensive military backgrounds who had been standing silently by the doors, move with terrifying practiced speed. One guard grabs Andre firmly by the collar of his ruined designer suit jacket, hauling him backward with such immense force that the seams of the expensive fabric rip loudly down the back. The other guard grabs Andre by the waist and sweeps his legs violently out from under him. They drag him ruthlessly off the table and slam him face first onto the unforgiving hardwood floor. The sound of his body hitting the wood is a heavy breath-stealing thud that rattles the room. Andre gasps loudly, all the air violently forced out of his lungs upon impact. A heavy combat boot presses firmly between his shoulder blades, pinning his spine securely to the ground. A guard twists Andre's arms sharply behind his back, securing his wrists with a ruthless, unyielding grip. Andre thrashes against the floor, spitting and cursing, acting like a rabid animal caught in a steel snare. He screams my name over and over, chaining together every vile, degrading insult he can muster. He curses Brenda and Richard for bringing me into his home. He curses the day I was born. He thrashes his legs trying to kick the security guards, but they hold him down with effortless clinical precision. I slowly stand up from my chair. I smooth out the invisible wrinkles in my bespoke suit jacket, maintaining absolute terrifying composure. I walk slowly around the edge of the long dining table, the sharp, deliberate click of my heels echoing clearly over the sound of his pathetic, muffled sobbing. I stop right in front of him. I look down at the golden child, the undisputed prince of the family, the man who truly believed he was destined for greatness and unlimited wealth. He is pinned to the floor, his face pressed painfully against the cold wood, completely powerless, completely ruined. Harrison watches the scene in absolute silence from the head of the table, casually sipping a glass of bourbon, entirely unbothered by the trash being forcibly taken out of his dining room. Suddenly, a sharp, jarring ringtone cuts through the sound of Andre's heavy, ragged breathing. It is coming from the inner pocket of his torn suit jacket. Andre twitches, trying to reach for the device, but the security guard applies just enough pressure to his spine to keep him entirely immobile. The phone rings again, loud and persistent, demanding attention. I crouch down elegantly, balancing effortlessly on the balls of my feet so my face is just inches from his. I look up at the security guard and give him a small, polite nod. "Hold him perfectly still," I say quietly. I reach my hand into the inner pocket of Andre's ruined jacket. He tries to bite at my wrist, a pathetic, desperate snap of his jaws, but he misses entirely, his teeth clicking together on empty air. I pull out his sleek, expensive smartphone. The caller ID displays an unknown corporate number. I look directly into Andre's terrified, bloodshot eyes. I swipe my finger across the screen to answer the call, and I press the speakerphone icon. I hold the phone right next to his ear so he can hear every single syllable with perfect, agonizing clarity. "Hello," a crisp, highly professional woman's voice echoes out of the speaker. "I am calling from the Asset Recovery Division of First National Bank. I am trying to reach Andre." I hold the phone incredibly steady, not breaking eye contact with the man pinned beneath me. Andre is currently indisposed. I answer, my voice smooth, polite, and thoroughly professional, but he is listening very closely. "Please go ahead." The bank representative clears her throat, entirely unfazed by the unusual response. "Very well. This is an official, legally mandated notification regarding the primary estate currently held under the names of Brenda and Richard. Due to a federal seizure order executed early this morning by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the blind trust backing the primary mortgage on the property has been officially and permanently liquidated. As a direct result of this federal action, all connected accounts are in immediate, unrecoverable default. The property has been seized by federal marshals. The locks have been changed, and the perimeter is currently secured by armed law enforcement." The caller pauses, taking a breath before delivering the final, fatal blow with absolute corporate detachment. "We are informing all listed residents that the property is permanently foreclosed. All personal belongings inside the residence are currently frozen as evidence in an ongoing federal money laundering investigation. Anyone attempting to access the grounds, including family members, will be immediately arrested for federal trespassing. This decision is final. Thank you." The line goes dead with a sharp final click. The silence that follows is heavier than anything I have ever experienced. I stand back up to my full height, slipping his expensive phone directly into my own pocket. I look down at Andre. He has stopped thrashing against the boots of the security guards. He has stopped cursing my name. The realization hits him with the crushing, inescapable weight of a concrete avalanche. He has no fiancée to bail him out. He has no wealthy in-laws to protect him. He has no fake business to generate income. He has no stolen trust fund to steal from. And now he has absolutely no home to return to. The sprawling suburban mansion he grew up in, the fortress of privilege where I was treated like a dog, is gone forever. He is entirely, permanently, and irrevocably homeless. I stare down at the man who arrogantly told me I was born to serve. The silence in the dining room is absolute, heavy with the undeniable reality of his total destruction. The absolute silence that follows the bank representative's click is a heavy, suffocating blanket over the dining room. I look down at Andre, whose face is pressed against the cold marble floor. The thrashing has stopped. The screaming has stopped. The profound, inescapable reality of his situation has finally crushed the last remaining embers of his toxic entitlement. He is not a prince. He is not a wealthy entrepreneur. He is a fraud, and he is entirely, completely homeless. "Get him out of my house!" Harrison commands, his voice sharp and unyielding, slicing through the heavy air. "Do not let him walk. Drag him to the gate and throw him off the property." The two massive security guards do not hesitate. They haul Andre up by the armpits of his ruined, sweat-stained designer suit. His legs drag uselessly behind him as they march him out of the grand dining room, his expensive leather shoes scraping against the polished floor. He does not fight back. He does not look at Chloe. He does not look at me. He is a hollow, broken shell being forcibly removed from a kingdom he never truly belonged in. Chloe finally moves. She lets out a long, shuddering breath, staring at the crystal glass where her massive engagement ring still rests at the bottom, magnified by the ice water. She reaches out her hand, trembling slightly, and pushes the glass further away, an instinctual, physical rejection of the lie she almost married. She looks up at me, her blue eyes wide, no longer filled with the terrifying composure of a sterling, but with the raw, vulnerable exhaustion of a woman who just barely escaped a catastrophic disaster. "Thank you, Tasha," she whispers, her voice barely audible over the distant sound of the front doors slamming shut behind Andre. "You do not owe me any thanks, Chloe," I reply softly, ensuring my tone is gentle, completely devoid of the sharp edge I used on Andre. "I just made sure you knew the truth before it was too late." Harrison walks around the long mahogany table. The rigid, terrifying judge softens into a deeply exhausted, intensely protective father. He pulls Chloe into a tight embrace, kissing the top of her head. He looks over her shoulder at me, his eyes filled with a profound, quiet respect. He extends his right hand. I take it, feeling the firm, solid grip of a man who values truth above all else. "We have a long road ahead with the federal prosecutors," Tasha Harrison says, his voice steady and resolute. "Richard and Brenda will try every dirty trick in the book to reduce their sentences. They will lie. They will play the victim. But they do not know what is coming. They do not know the full extent of the evidence you have provided." I hold his gaze, the diamond-hard resolve solidifying in my chest. "They can try whatever they want, Harrison. I have spent 35 years surviving their cruelty in the shadows. I am not hiding anymore." Harrison nods slowly, a fierce, predatory gleam in his eyes. "Good. Because your biological family has been waiting for this moment for 3 decades. The mention of my true family sends a sudden electric jolt through my system. The adrenaline of the confrontation with Andre begins to fade, replaced by a deep, overwhelming anticipation. For 35 years, I believed I was an unwanted burden, a charity case graciously taken in by a wealthy family who resented my very existence. I believed I was meant to serve, meant to be invisible. But I am not. I am a Laurent. I have blood ties, true family waiting for me." Harrison pulls a sleek black smartphone from his pocket. He taps the screen twice and holds it out to me. "They are in a private suite at the Four Seasons downtown," he says softly. "They flew in the second the DNA test confirmed the match. They have been waiting for me to give them the all clear." I take the phone from his hand. My fingers are trembling slightly, a sharp contrast to the absolute stillness I maintained while destroying Andre. I look at the screen. A single direct phone number is displayed. The name above it reads, Marcus Laurent, my biological uncle, the man who has spent millions of dollars in 33 years hunting for the ghost of his stolen niece. I press call. I lift the phone to my ear. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic, wild rhythm that threatens to drown out any coherent thought. The phone rings once, twice. A deep, resonant voice answers on the third ring. It is a voice that sounds incredibly similar to my own, carrying a cadence and depth that feels instantly, undeniably familiar. "Harrison," the voice asks, thick with raw, barely contained emotion. I swallow hard, forcing the massive lump in my throat down. "No, I say, my voice cracking, the polished professional businesswoman fading away to reveal the 35-year-old woman desperately searching for home. It is Tasha. A sharp, ragged intake of breath echoes through the speaker. A heavy, profound silence follows, filled with the weight of 3 decades of agonizing uncertainty and unimaginable grief, finally colliding with absolute, undeniable truth. Tasha Marcus says, his voice breaking completely, a powerful man, completely undone by a single word. "Oh my God, Tasha, we are here. We have been waiting so long. I will be there in 30 minutes, I whisper, tears finally burning the edges of my vision. I hand the phone back to Harrison. He gives me a warm, understanding smile, the kind of smile a real father gives a daughter. My private driver is waiting out front, he says. Go. We will handle the fallout here. I turn and walk out of the Sterling estate. I do not look back at the grand dining room or the crystal glass holding the sunken diamond. I walk out the heavy mahogany front doors, stepping into the crisp, cool Boston air. The sky is a brilliant clear blue. I slide into the back of my waiting SUV, the plush leather seats a stark contrast to the hard, cold reality I just left behind. The drive downtown feels like a blur. I watch the city skyline passing by, the towering skyscrapers reflecting the late afternoon sun. I am not the maid anymore. I am not the charity case. I am a woman claiming her birthright. The SUV pulls up to the lavish entrance of the Four Seasons Hotel. The doorman opens my door immediately, but I do not wait for his greeting. I stride through the opulent lobby, bypassing the front desk, entirely heading straight for the private elevators reserved for the penthouse suites. I swipe the access card Harrison provided, and the doors slide shut, lifting me high above the bustling city streets. The elevator chimes softly as it reaches the top floor. The doors open to a wide, softly lit corridor. At the far end, the double doors to the presidential suite are already open. I walk slowly down the hall, my heart pounding so hard I can hear it in my ears. I step through the threshold. The suite is expansive, flooded with natural light from the massive windows overlooking the harbor. A man and a woman are standing in the center of the living area. They look incredibly distinguished, exuding a quiet, profound strength. The man, Marcus Laurent, has silver hair at his temples and the exact same sharp, sloping cheekbones that look back at me in the mirror every morning. The woman, my biological Aunt Elaine, has eyes the precise identical shade of deep, warm brown as mine. They freeze the second I walk into the room. They stare at me, their faces completely slack with shock and absolute awe. It is as if they are looking at a ghost that has suddenly materialized into a living, breathing woman. Elaine takes a tentative, trembling step forward. She raises a shaking hand to her mouth, tears instantly spilling over her cheeks. Josephine. She whispers, her voice cracking, speaking the name of my mother, the woman who vanished 33 years ago. You look exactly like her. The dam breaks. The carefully constructed armor I have worn for 35 years, the impenetrable wall I built to survive Richard and Brenda's abuse, completely shatters. I let out a choked, ragged sob. Marcus closes the distance in 3 long strides. He wraps his arms around me, pulling me into a fierce, desperately tight embrace. It is not the stiff, awkward hugs Brenda forced me to endure for family photos. It is an embrace of pure, primal, unconditional love. Elaine wraps her arms around both of us, weeping openly into my shoulder. We stand there in the center of the lavish hotel suite, 3 strangers bound by blood, and 33 years of stolen time holding on to each other, as if letting go would mean disappearing forever. I bury my face in Marcus's shoulder, letting decades of pain, isolation, and profound loneliness wash out of me in heavy, racking sobs. You are safe now, Marcus whispers fiercely, his own tears dampening my hair. We have you. We are never letting you go. We are going to destroy the people who took you from us. I pull back slightly, looking up into his fierce, protective eyes. I wipe the tears from my face, a new intense fire igniting in my chest. They are currently sitting in federal holding cells waiting for their arraignment, I tell him, my voice steadying, the tears drying quickly. They are trying to leverage a plea deal by claiming they provided a loving, stable home for me. They are telling the prosecutors that they nurtured me and treated me like a daughter. Marcus's jaw clenches, a terrifying, icy fury replacing the profound sorrow in his eyes. They kidnapped you, he growls, his hands tightening on my shoulders. They stole your life. They do not get to play the victim. Our legal team is already mobilizing. We will make sure they never see the sun again. I shake my head slowly, a cold, hard determination settling over my features. No, Marcus, I say softly, stepping back and straightening my bespoke suit jacket. I appreciate the legal weight of the Laurent family. I appreciate everything you have done to find me. But you have to let me handle this. Elaine looks at me, confusion mixing with deep concern. Tasha, you do not have to fight them alone anymore. We are here. We have resources. I look at the family that spent 3 decades searching for me. The family that Richard and Brenda tried to erase from my existence. I know you have resources, Elaine. I say, my voice ringing with undeniable authority. But they did not just steal my biological identity. They tried to break my spirit. They tried to convince me I was nothing but a servant. I am not going to hide behind your lawyers. I am going to stand in that courtroom and I am going to bury them myself. My phone vibrates in my pocket. A sharp, urgent text message alert cuts through the silence of the hotel suite. I pull it out and glance at the screen. The message is from Vance, the lead FBI investigator. Arraignment is set for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Richard and Brenda are pleading not guilty. Their lawyer is pushing the loving adoptive parents' narrative hard. They want bail. I look up at Marcus and Elaine, sliding the phone back into my pocket. The fierce, unyielding businesswoman who built an empire from a damp basement takes full control. The reunion is beautiful, but the war is not over. I grab my coat from the plush velvet armchair. We have a bail hearing to attend tomorrow morning. I announce, my tone absolute and merciless. I have 20 years of meticulously documented records, journals, and receipts proving I was kept as an indentured servant while they siphoned millions. It is time to show the judge exactly how loving Richard and Brenda really were. The morning air in Boston is sharp and biting as I step out of the sleek black SUV. The federal courthouse looms above us, a massive structure of granite and glass that represents the absolute end of the line for Richard and Brenda. I am not wearing a cheap catering uniform today. I am wearing a custom-tailored deep burgundy power suit. It fits me perfectly, projecting an aura of complete, unyielding authority. Marcus and Elaine walk securely by my side, their presence providing a profound grounding strength I have never known before. Harrison Sterling walks a few paces ahead effortlessly, using his decades of judicial influence to part the sea of aggressive reporters and secure us prime seating directly behind the federal prosecutor. The heavy wooden doors of the courtroom swing shut, sealing us inside. The atmosphere is incredibly tense and clinical. The side door opens, and 2 armed federal marshals lead Richard and Brenda into the room. The sight of them is deeply, profoundly satisfying. They are completely stripped of their designer clothes, their expensive jewelry, and their manufactured arrogance. They are wearing shapeless, bright orange prison jumpsuits. Heavy steel chains bind their wrists to their waists, rattling loudly with every pathetic, shuffled step they take. Brenda's meticulously dyed hair is a frizzy, tangled mess. Richard looks like he has aged 20 years overnight. His face is pale, sagging, and hollow. Their highly paid defense attorney stands up aggressively, straightening his silk tie. He immediately launches into a sickening, thoroughly fabricated fairy tale. He attempts to paint my kidnappers as desperate but deeply loving parents who simply made a regrettable financial mistake 3 decades ago. He claims they nurtured me, sheltered me, and provided a stable, caring home environment. He argues that they are respected pillars of the community, with no prior criminal records, and formally requests that they be released on bail pending their trial. He tries to minimize their heinous, life-altering crimes into a simple, victimless, white-collar misunderstanding. The federal prosecutor immediately stands and formally requests permission from the bench to allow a victim impact statement regarding the bail determination. The judge, a stern, sharp-eyed man with absolutely no tolerance for courtroom theatrics, grants the request without a second thought. I stand up from my seat. The entire courtroom shifts its focus directly to me. Richard and Brenda physically recoil, sinking lower into their heavy wooden chairs. They truly believed I would cower in the shadows. They thought I would be too traumatized, too broken, or too intimidated by the federal legal system to face them in public. They are entirely wrong. I do not walk to the podium empty-handed. I carry a heavy reinforced banker's box. I set it down on the wooden stand with a loud resounding thud that makes Brenda jump. I look directly at the judge. I do not let my voice tremble. I speak with the clear, resonant diction of a CEO who commands rooms filled with powerful executives. Your Honor. I begin ensuring my voice carries to the very back of the gallery. The defense just claimed these two individuals provided a loving, nurturing home. That is a complete and utter fabrication. They did not raise a daughter. They held a hostage. I open the heavy lid of the banker's box. I do not offer emotional pleas. I offer irrefutable physical proof. I pull out a thick stack of medical records. I present documentation proving that I was systematically denied basic pediatric health care and dental visits for my entire childhood, while their biological son, Andre, received top-tier medical treatment, elective cosmetic orthodontics, and private sports therapy. I pull out fraudulent tax returns spanning 2 decades. I show the judge exactly how they claimed me as a compensated employee of a fake domestic shell company, just to write off the meager, inadequate groceries they permitted me to consume. I reach deeper into the box and pull out 5 worn, leather-bound journals. These are my daily logs keeping track of my harsh reality since I was 10 years old. I read aloud the grueling mandatory daily chore lists they aggressively enforced. I described the unheated, unfinished concrete basement they forced me to sleep in, complete with photographic evidence of the mold on the walls. I detailed the heavy brass padlocks Brenda installed on the kitchen refrigerator and pantry doors every single night, so I could not eat without her explicit degrading permission. I submit a thick black binder full of financial receipts. I prove that they used the millions stolen from my biological family's trust fund to purchase luxury vehicles, country club memberships, and extravagant vacations while I was forced to walk 3 miles in the freezing snow to a rundown public high school because they refused to buy me a bus pass. I look dead at Brenda, making sure she feels the absolute weight of her destruction. They did not make a financial mistake, Your Honor. They operated an illegal, localized human trafficking ring funded entirely by a kidnapped child's blood money. The judge is absolutely appalled. The color drains from his face as he flips through the top layer of the meticulous, undeniable documentation I just submitted. The defense attorney jumps up, stammering and sweating, trying to lodge an objection, but his voice squeaks and falters. He has absolutely no counter-argument. He cannot argue with 20 years of handwritten journals, verified medical neglect, and blatant documented tax fraud. The judge glares at Richard and Brenda with pure, unadulterated disgust. He raises his heavy wooden gavel. Based on the overwhelming severity of the charges, the clear history of sustained psychological and physical abuse, and the staggering financial resources currently unaccounted for, he declares them a severe flight risk and a profound danger to the community. He strikes the gavel down hard against the sounding block. Bail is categorically denied. They are remanded to federal custody until the trial. Brenda lets out a horrifying, grating scream, thrashing wildly against the federal marshals who step forward to secure her chains. Richard simply collapses forward, resting his forehead on the defense table and weeping uncontrollably like a broken child. The marshals grip them roughly by the arms and haul them away. They are going back to their cold concrete cells. The pristine upper-middle-class facade they worshipped above all else is legally and permanently eradicated. I walk out of the federal courthouse, stepping back into the crisp, bright morning air. Marcus and Elaine flank me, their faces glowing with fierce, undeniable pride. We have won the first major battle. The predators have been locked in a cage and they will never be able to hurt me or anyone else ever again. We reach my waiting private SUV. I slide into the luxurious leather back seat, finally allowing myself to take a deep, relaxing breath. The adrenaline is slowly fading, replaced by a sharp, focused energy. I pull out my smartphone to check my business emails, needing to catch up on the culinary consulting empire I have neglected for the past 48 hours while dismantling my abusers. I open the secure administrative portal for an ultra-exclusive high-end restaurant group that I quietly acquired 3 weeks ago through a proxy LLC. A bright red urgent notification pops up on the screen from the Corporate Human Resources Director. They are flagging a brand new application for a senior management position at our most prestigious flagship location. The position oversees the dining room staff and reports directly to the executive board. I open the digital resume attached to the urgent alert. The name at the top of the document is Andre. He is desperate, completely broke, and begging for an expedited interview to secure immediate income now that his federal assets have been frozen and his wealthy fiancée has abandoned him. I smile, a cold, deeply calculating grin spreading across my face. I tap the screen and type a rapid, decisive reply to the Human Resources Director. Tell him to come in tomorrow morning at 9 sharp. I will be conducting this interview myself. I arrive at the corporate headquarters of the Apex Culinary Group at 7 in the morning. The building is a towering monolith of glass and steel in the center of the financial district, projecting wealth and unyielding corporate dominance. I purchased the entire restaurant group 3 weeks ago through a proxy limited liability company. It was a strategic acquisition designed to expand my culinary consulting empire, but today it serves a much more intimate personal purpose. I bypass the bustling main lobby, avoiding the crowded security checkpoints, and take the private executive elevator directly to the top floor. My bespoke charcoal suit is perfectly tailored, projecting absolute authority and uncompromising power. I step into the expansive master boardroom and take my seat at the head of the massive mahogany table. The room features floor-to-ceiling windows that offer a commanding panoramic view of the entire city skyline. I tap the high-definition security monitor built into the sleek desk surface, ensuring every camera feed is fully operational. At exactly 8:45, I see him. Andre walks through the revolving glass doors of the ground floor lobby. The sight of him is staggering. The arrogant golden child who previously wore nothing but custom Italian silk and imported leather is completely unrecognizable. He is wearing a cheap, ill-fitting polyester suit that looks like it came from a discount clearance rack. The fabric is shiny in all the wrong places, and the sleeves are visibly too short. His posture is deeply slumped, his shoulders hunched inward like a man carrying the weight of total ruin. The federal government seized every single asset he purchased with my stolen blood money. His bank accounts are frozen, his luxury vehicles are impounded, and his wealthy fiancée Chloe has completely severed all contact. He is absolutely destitute. He approaches the reception desk with a nervous, trembling energy to announce himself for his 9 o'clock management interview. He genuinely believes he is about to sit down with a faceless corporate human resources director. He thinks he can charm his way into a high-paying executive position using his fabricated resume and his practiced country club smile. He has absolutely no idea he is walking straight into the jaws of a trap I meticulously set just for him. The receptionist directs him to the standard employee elevators. I watch his progress on the security monitors as he rides up to the top floor. He keeps wiping his sweaty palms on the sides of his cheap trousers, leaving dark, damp streaks on the cheap fabric. He pulls out a wrinkled paper copy of his resume and attempts to smooth out the creases against his leg. He is terrified. For his entire 33 years of existence, Richard and Brenda paved his way with my stolen ransom money. He never had to earn a single thing. He never had to face a genuine consequence or compete in the real brutal world. Now he is stripped of his false royalty and thrust into a harsh reality where he has absolutely no actual marketable skills. The heavy frosted glass doors of the boardroom slide open with a soft mechanical hiss. I have my high-backed leather executive chair turned around, facing the spectacular view of the city skyline, so my back is entirely to the door. I hear his hesitant, shuffling footsteps against the polished concrete floor. He clears his throat, attempting to project the fake manufactured confidence he always relied on to manipulate the people around him. "Good morning," Andre says, his voice cracking slightly on the first syllable. I am Andre, and I am here for the senior management interview. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me today. I place my hands firmly on the smooth leather armrests. I do not rush the moment. I slowly, deliberately swivel the heavy executive chair around to face the center of the room. Andre freezes completely. His body locks up as if he has just been struck by a high-voltage electrical current. His eyes bug out of his head, and his jaw goes completely slack, dropping open in an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. The cheap manila folder slips from his shaking hands, sending his printed resumes fluttering down to the floor in a pathetic, disorganized mess. He stares at me sitting at the head of the corporate table. The blood completely drains from his face, leaving him a sickly, pale gray. His brain violently short-circuits, unable to process the impossible reality standing right in front of him. The sister he verbally abused, the woman he treated as an invisible maid for his entire life, is the absolute ruler of the corporate empire he is desperately begging for a job. Hello, Andre, I say, my voice echoing through the massive, silent boardroom with lethal calm precision. Please take a seat. We have a great deal of ground to cover in this interview today. He does not move a single muscle. He is paralyzed by profound shock and a rapidly blooming sense of dread. He looks wildly around the room, as if expecting hidden cameras to pop out of the walls or federal agents to tackle him to the floor. He looks back at the frosted glass doors, clearly considering a frantic sprint toward the elevators. But he has nowhere to run. He has no home, no money, and no safety net waiting to catch him. Hunger and desperation act like concrete, anchoring his cheap shoes to the floor. You own this. He stammers, his voice barely a breathy, raspy whisper. You own the Apex Culinary Group. I purchased it in cash exactly 21 days ago, I reply, leaning forward and resting my elbows on the polished mahogany table. I own the flagship restaurants. I own the commercial real estate. I own the payroll department that processes the meager salary you are here to beg for. Sit down, Andre. His legs give out entirely, and he collapses heavily into the nearest leather guest chair. The aggressive arrogance that defined him at the country club is entirely gone. The man who ordered me back to the kitchen, the man who tried to physically intimidate me in my penthouse just weeks ago, is reduced to a sniveling broken shell. He clutches the edges of the boardroom table, trying to stop his hands from shaking uncontrollably. Tasha, please. He begs, the false pride shattering completely into jagged pieces. I have absolutely nothing left. The feds took everything. My accounts are locked tight. My credit cards are canceled. I spent the last 3 nights sleeping in the back row of a 24-hour transit station, trying not to freeze. Chloe blocked my number, and her father got a restraining order against me. I cannot even afford to hire a public defender for the accessory charges they hit me with. I listened to his pathetic litany of self-inflicted miseries without a single ounce of pity. You lived off my stolen ransom for 3 decades, Andre. I say, my voice sharp and unforgiving, slicing through his victim narrative. You drove luxury cars and drank vintage champagne while I scrubbed the floors and froze in a damp basement. You built your entire identity on the trauma inflicted upon me by your parents. You do not get to ask for sympathy now that the stolen credit cards have stopped working. He leans forward, pressing his hands together in a desperate, pleading gesture. I know I was wrong, Tasha. I know my parents did terrible, unforgivable things to you. But we grew up together under the same roof. We shared a childhood. You are the only family I have left in this world. You know I can work hard. You know I understand the hospitality industry inside and out. I can manage the dining room floor. I can handle the elite clients because I know how they think. I just need one chance to prove myself to you. I will work 80 hours a week. I will do whatever you ask. Please, Tasha, I am begging you. Do not let me starve on the streets. I look at him, taking the time to fully digest the sheer audacity of his request. He is actually attempting to leverage a childhood built entirely on my daily humiliation. He actually believes the trauma bond Brenda and Richard forced upon us gives him a free pass to my hard-earned corporate payroll. I stand up slowly, smoothing the crisp lines of my bespoke suit. I walk around the massive mahogany table, my heels clicking sharply against the floor. I bend down and pick up the wrinkled resume he dropped. I walk back to the head of the table and hold the document up between us. I read the fabricated bullet points out loud, ensuring my voice carries the full weight of my disgust. Founder and chief executive officer of a luxury catering enterprise, expert in high net worth client relations, master of upscale hospitality management. I lower the paper and lock my gaze directly onto his terrified, bloodshot eyes. Every single word on this page is a massive, pathetic lie, Andre. You did not found a company. You laundered stolen money through shell corporations. You do not understand hospitality. You only understand how to bark degrading orders at people you believe are beneath you. You have absolutely no real skills, no genuine work ethic, and no concept of what it actually takes to build something from the ground up. Tasha, please, he whimpers, his eyes filling with desperate, cowardly tears that spill over his cheeks. I will scrub the floors. I will wash the dishes in the back. I just need a paycheck to survive. I look at the heavy-duty industrial paper shredder sitting right next to my executive desk. I look back at Andre, making sure he sees the absolute permanent end of his unearned privilege burning brightly in my eyes. You told me that some people are simply born to serve, Andre. I say, my voice dropping to a cold, merciless pitch that seals his fate forever. You told me I belonged in the kitchen because I was nothing but the help. I hold his pathetic, fabricated resume over the mechanical slot of the shredder. I do not break eye contact with him as I let the paper slip from my fingers. The machine roars to life with a loud, grinding mechanical growl, instantly pulling the document down and violently shredding his fake identity into hundreds of tiny, worthless strips of confetti. The grinding mechanical hum of the industrial paper shredder slowly fades into a heavy and absolute silence. I stand at the head of the polished mahogany boardroom table, watching the tiny, worthless strips of paper settle at the bottom of the clear plastic bin. Andre stares at the machine with wide, unblinking eyes, his chest heaving with ragged, defeated breaths. The last desperate thread of his manufactured delusion has just been violently severed. He looks down at his empty, trembling hands and finally realizes there is no negotiation to be had. There is no pity to exploit, and there is absolutely no salvation coming from me. I stand up from my executive leather chair. I lean forward, planting both of my hands firmly on the smooth surface of the boardroom table. I look down at him, letting the full, staggering weight of my reclaimed power press against his fragile, shattered ego. You told me that some people are simply born to serve, Andre. I say, my voice steady and completely devoid of mercy. You spent 33 years believing you were a privileged prince, and I was your pathetic peasant. You made me scrub your floors on my hands and knees while you spent my stolen ransom money on luxury sports cars and country club dues. You built your entire false identity on my daily humiliation. Well, the fairy tale is officially over, and reality has finally arrived. I step out from behind the massive executive desk and walk slowly toward the far corner of the expansive boardroom. I open a sleek utility closet and pull out a heavy industrial yellow mop bucket and a worn, bristled mop. I roll the bucket across the imported hardwood floor, the squeaking wheels echoing loudly in the tense, silent room. I kick the bucket directly toward his cheap, scuffed shoes. It hits the tip of his toe with a sharp, definitive thud. Looks like it is your turn to serve, I command, locking my eyes onto his terrified, bloodshot gaze. There are 12 public restrooms on the ground floor of this corporate building. You can take this mop and start with the men's room down the hall. Or you can turn around, walk out of those glass doors, and try your luck sleeping at the 24-hour transit station again tonight. The choice is entirely yours. Andre looks from the yellow mop bucket up to my face. His jaw trembles uncontrollably. He opens his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg one last time, or offer some pathetic apology. But the cold, impenetrable steel in my expression stops him cold. He realizes I am entirely serious. I will not give him a management position. I will not hand him a single dollar of my hard-earned culinary empire. He slowly pushes himself up from the leather guest chair. His broad shoulders slump forward, completely crushed by the undeniable, brutal reality of his new existence. He does not reach for the mop. He cannot swallow his toxic pride, even when faced with absolute starvation. He turns his back to me and shuffles toward the frosted glass doors. He looks like a broken, empty shell of a man, walking out into a harsh, unforgiving world where he is absolutely nothing. The heavy glass doors slide shut behind him, sealing his fate forever. 6 months later, the cold, clinical atmosphere of the federal courthouse provides the perfect backdrop for the ultimate reckoning. I am sitting in the front row of the gallery wearing a tailored, immaculate ivory power suit that projects absolute authority and unbothered grace. I am completely surrounded by my true biological family. My uncle Marcus sits to my right, his posture rigid with deep protective strength. My aunt Elaine sits to my left, holding my hand with a fierce, unconditional warmth. Harrison Sterling sits firmly in the row directly behind us, having traded his intimidating judicial robes for the role of a steadfast, brilliant mentor and loyal family ally. The heavy side doors of the courtroom swing open, and armed federal marshals march Richard and Brenda into the room. They look utterly unrecognizable. The polished, arrogant country club socialites have been completely eroded by 6 months in federal holding cells. They are wearing faded, baggy orange jumpsuits. Their wrists and ankles are bound by heavy steel chains that rattle loudly and pitifully against the wooden floorboards. Brenda looks incredibly aged, her face hollow and pale, stripped of her expensive cosmetics, and forced to face the raw, ugly truth of her actions without the shield of stolen wealth. Richard refuses to look up from the floor, his spirit entirely broken by the sheer magnitude of the federal charges brought against them. The federal judge looks down from the high wooden bench with an expression of pure, concentrated disgust. He does not mince words or offer any leniency. He aggressively tears into their fabricated defense, dismantling their pathetic attempts to frame themselves as loving, misguided parents who made a simple financial mistake. He lays out the extensive, damning evidence of their lifelong crimes: money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion, and the most egregious, unforgivable charge of all, which is kidnapping by proxy. "You did not provide a loving home," the judge's voice booms across the silent courtroom, echoing with righteous, furious authority. "You operated a localized, deeply cruel human trafficking scheme funded entirely by the ransom of a stolen child. You subjected a brilliant, resilient woman to decades of severe psychological torment and forced servitude simply to finance a lifestyle of fraudulent luxury. You stole her biological identity and used her trauma to elevate your own biological son. Your actions represent the absolute lowest, most despicable depths of human greed." He picks up his heavy wooden gavel and strikes it against the sounding block. The sharp crack rings out like a gunshot, signaling the absolute end of their reign of terror. The judge sentences Richard and Brenda to 35 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. They will spend the rest of their miserable, pathetic lives locked inside tiny concrete cells, stripped of their false names, their stolen wealth, and their freedom. Brenda collapses against the defense table, letting out a loud, wretched wail that echoes tragically through the high ceilings of the courtroom. Richard simply drops his head into his chained hands and sobs uncontrollably. I watch them being roughly hauled away by the federal marshals, dragging their heavy chains behind them as they disappear through the side doors. I do not feel a single ounce of pity. I do not shed a single tear. I simply squeeze my Aunt Elaine's hand, stand up from the wooden bench, and walk out of the courthouse, leaving my abusers behind in the dark, rotting past exactly where they belong. The warm golden light of the late Sunday afternoon filters through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of my sprawling Laurent family estate. The air inside the expansive state-of-the-art kitchen is filled with the rich, intoxicating aroma of slow-roasted collard greens, buttery baked cornbread, and perfectly seasoned fried chicken. But this time I am not cooking because I am forced to. I am not rushing to plate appetizers for entitled, abusive people who refuse to look me in the eye. I am cooking out of pure, unadulterated love, honoring a rich, deeply resilient cultural legacy that Richard and Brenda tried so desperately to erase from my identity. The massive dining room table is set with flawless crystal and polished silver, but the atmosphere is completely free of pretense. It is filled with roaring laughter and genuine vibrant joy. My Uncle Marcus is pouring expensive vintage wine, telling a hilarious story about a recent corporate acquisition he handled. My Aunt Elaine is arranging a beautiful centerpiece of fresh-cut lilies, her eyes glowing with absolute happiness every time she looks over at me. Harrison Sterling sits near the head of the table, laughing warmly, having seamlessly transitioned from a terrifying courtroom ally to a cherished, respected family friend who deeply understands the value of truth and loyalty. I carry a heavy, steaming serving platter out from the kitchen, the soft fabric of my elegant flowing dress brushing gently against the imported hardwood floors. I set the food down in the center of the table, surrounded by the people who spent 3 decades pouring their hearts and immense resources into finding me. The people who see my absolute worth not as a servant, but as a brilliant, powerful woman who conquered an impossible nightmare and reclaimed her rightful throne. I pour myself a crisp, chilled glass of champagne and step away from the lively chatter of the dining table, walking slowly toward the expansive glass doors that open onto the private stone terrace. I step out into the cool evening air, feeling the gentle breeze brush against my face. The sun is setting over the distant city skyline, painting the heavy clouds in brilliant, fiery strokes of deep purple and bright gold. I look out over the sprawling, immaculate grounds of my estate. I think about the damp, freezing basement where I spent my childhood, crying myself to sleep, while listening to the heavy footsteps of people who viewed me as nothing but a human shield for their crimes. I think about the scared girl who saved her pennies from minimum wage jobs, who secretly taught herself advanced culinary techniques, who quietly and ruthlessly built an empire in the shadows, while her abusers flaunted her stolen wealth. That girl is gone forever. In her place stands a mogul, an heiress, a survivor who took every sharp, jagged piece of trauma thrown at her and forged it into an impenetrable, dazzling armor of absolute success. My wealth is entirely secure. My biological identity is fully reclaimed. My future is entirely and unapologetically mine. They tried to bury me in the kitchen, not realizing I owned the whole house. Have you ever had to cut off toxic family to find your true worth? Let me know in the comments below. The grinding hum of the industrial shredder echoes in the massive boardroom, slicing through the heavy, suffocated silence. I watch the tiny, meaningless strips of Andre's fabricated resume fall like snow into the clear plastic bin. The noise abruptly stops, leaving a ringing stillness in its wake. Andre is completely paralyzed. His chest rises and falls in shallow, panicked jerks. He stares at the empty shredder slot, his eyes wide and vacant, as if he has just watched his own execution. The final, desperate tether to his delusion has been violently severed. There is no charm left to deploy. There is no manipulation tactic that will work. He is a fraud sitting in a cheap, ill-fitting suit, utterly exposed under the harsh fluorescent lights of a corporate empire he can never touch. I stand up slowly from my leather executive chair. I place both of my hands flat against the cool, polished mahogany of the boardroom table. I lean forward, invading his space, letting the sheer, unyielding weight of my reclaimed power press down on his fragile, shattered ego. You told me some people are born to serve, Andre. I say, my voice dropping to a terrifying, merciless calm. You spent your entire life believing you were a prince and I was your peasant. You forced me to scrub your floors on my hands and knees, while you spent my stolen ransom money on luxury cars and country club dues. You built your entire identity on my daily humiliation. Well, the fairy tale is officially over. I step out from behind the massive desk and walk with deliberate, measured steps toward a sleek utility closet in the corner of the room. I open the door and pull out a heavy industrial yellow mop bucket. I roll it across the imported hardwood floor. The squeaking wheels echo loudly, mocking the tense silence. I stop right in front of him and kick the bucket directly to his scuffed, cheap shoes. It hits his toe with a sharp, definitive thud. Looks like it is your turn, I command, locking my eyes onto his terrified, bloodshot gaze. There are 12 public restrooms on the ground floor of this corporate building. You can start with the bathrooms. Andre looks from the yellow bucket up to my face. His jaw trembles uncontrollably. He opens his mouth to speak, perhaps to beg one last time, but the cold, impenetrable steel in my expression stops him completely. He realizes I am entirely serious. I will not hand him a management position. I will not give him a single dollar of my hard-earned culinary empire. He slowly pushes himself up from the guest chair. His broad shoulders slump forward, utterly crushed by the brutal reality of his new existence. He does not reach for the mop. His toxic pride, though mortally wounded, will not allow him to scrub floors. He turns his back to me and shuffles toward the frosted glass doors. He looks like a broken, empty shell of a man walking out into a harsh, unforgiving world where he is absolutely nothing. The heavy glass doors slide shut behind him, sealing his fate forever. A brief time jump brings us to a crisp, freezing morning 8 months later. The cold, clinical atmosphere of the federal courthouse provides the perfect backdrop for the ultimate reckoning. I am sitting in the front row of the gallery wearing a tailored, immaculate, deep sapphire power suit that projects absolute authority and unbothered grace. I am completely surrounded by my true biological family. My uncle Marcus sits to my right, his posture rigid with deep protective strength. My aunt Elaine sits to my left, holding my hand with a fierce, unconditional warmth. Harrison Sterling sits firmly in the row directly behind us, having seamlessly transitioned from a terrifying courtroom ally to a steadfast mentor and loyal family friend. The heavy side doors of the courtroom swing open, and armed federal marshals march Richard and Brenda into the room. They look entirely unrecognizable. The polished, arrogant country club socialites have been completely eroded by months in federal holding cells. They are wearing faded, baggy orange jumpsuits. Their wrists and ankles are bound by heavy steel chains that rattle loudly against the wooden floorboards. Brenda looks incredibly aged, her face hollow and pale, stripped of her expensive cosmetics, and forced to face the raw, ugly truth of her actions without the shield of stolen wealth. Richard refuses to look up from the floor, his spirit entirely broken by the sheer magnitude of the federal charges brought against them. The federal judge looks down from the high wooden bench with an expression of pure, concentrated disgust. He does not mince words or offer any leniency. He aggressively tears into their fabricated defense, dismantling their pathetic attempts to frame themselves as loving, misguided parents. He lays out the extensive, damning evidence of their lifelong crimes: money laundering, wire fraud, tax evasion, and the most egregious, unforgivable charge of all, kidnapping by proxy. He raises his heavy wooden gavel and strikes it against the sounding block. The sharp crack rings out like a gunshot. The judge sentences Richard and Brenda to 35 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole. They will spend the rest of their miserable, pathetic lives locked inside tiny concrete cells, stripped of their false names, their stolen wealth, and their freedom. Brenda collapses against the defense table, letting out a loud, wretched wail that echoes tragically through the high ceilings of the courtroom. Richard simply drops his head into his chained hands and sobs uncontrollably. I watch them being roughly hauled away by the federal marshals, dragging their heavy chains behind them as they disappear through the side doors. I do not feel a single ounce of pity. I do not shed a single tear. I simply squeeze my Aunt Elaine's hand, stand up from the wooden bench, and walk out of the courthouse completely unbothered, leaving my abusers behind in the dark, rotting past, exactly where they belong. The warm, golden light of late Sunday afternoon filters through the massive floor-to-ceiling windows of my sprawling Laurent family estate. The air inside the expansive, state-of-the-art kitchen is filled with the rich, intoxicating aroma of slow-roasted collard greens, buttery baked cornbread, and perfectly seasoned fried chicken. But this time I am not cooking because I am forced to. I am not rushing to plate appetizers for entitled, abusive people who refuse to look me in the eye. I am cooking out of pure, unadulterated love, honoring a rich, deeply resilient cultural legacy that Richard and Brenda tried so desperately to erase from my identity. The massive dining room table is set with flawless crystal and polished silver, but the atmosphere is completely free of pretense. It is filled with roaring laughter and genuine vibrant joy. My Uncle Marcus is pouring expensive vintage wine, telling a hilarious story about a recent corporate acquisition he handled. My Aunt Elaine is arranging a beautiful centerpiece of fresh-cut lilies, her eyes glowing with absolute happiness every time she looks over at me. Harrison Sterling sits near the head of the table laughing warmly, completely at ease in the company of true friends who deeply understand the value of truth and loyalty. I carry a heavy steaming serving platter out from the kitchen, the soft fabric of my elegant flowing dress brushing gently against the imported hardwood floors. I set the food down in the center of the table, surrounded by the people who spent 3 decades pouring their hearts and immense resources into finding me. The people who see my absolute worth not as a servant, but as a brilliant, powerful woman who conquered an impossible nightmare and reclaimed her rightful throne. I pour myself a crisp, chilled glass of champagne and step away from the lively chatter of the dining table, walking slowly toward the expansive glass doors that open onto the private stone terrace. I step out into the cool evening air, feeling the gentle breeze brush against my face. The sun is setting over the distant city skyline, painting the heavy clouds in brilliant fiery strokes of deep purple and bright gold. I look out over the sprawling, immaculate grounds of my estate. I think about the damp, freezing basement where I spent my childhood crying myself to sleep, listening to the heavy footsteps of people who viewed me as nothing but a human shield for their crimes. I think about the scared girl who saved her pennies from minimum wage jobs, who secretly taught herself advanced culinary techniques, who quietly and ruthlessly built an empire in the shadows while her abusers flaunted her stolen wealth. That girl is gone forever. In her place stands a mogul, an heiress, a survivor who took every sharp, jagged piece of trauma thrown at her and forged it into an impenetrable, dazzling armor of absolute success. My wealth is entirely secure. My biological identity is fully reclaimed. My future is entirely and unapologetically mine. They tried to bury me in the kitchen, not realizing I owned the whole house. Have you ever had to cut off toxic family to find your true worth? Let me know in the comments. The most powerful lesson I learned is that your worth is never defined by those who try to keep you at the bottom. When toxic people try to bury you, they do not realize they are planting a seed. I spent years being told I was born to serve, but I used that isolation to quietly build my own empire. True power does not come from stolen wealth or a fake country club smile. It comes from an unwavering belief in yourself. You must be willing to walk away from tables where respect is no longer served. Eventually, you will build your own table. If you are ready to stop shrinking yourself for toxic people and start claiming your true worth, hit that like button, subscribe, and share your own survival story in the comments below.